This podcast is brought to you by patreon.com/Talking Simpsons. Head there to check out exclusive podcasts like Talking Futurama, Talk King of the Hill, the What a Cartoon Movie podcast, and tons more.
Cartoons from present in the past. Every week will be an animated bash. What a cartoon! What a cartoon! Maybe a short but mostly shows. We'll talk, we'll analyze, exploring as we go. What a cartoon! What a cartoon! What a cartoon! What a cartoon!
Hello, everybody, and welcome to What a Cartoon, where we curtsy to Captain Kangaroo. I'm one of your hosts, the guy who's constantly on fire, Bob Mackey, and this is an audio exploration of every cartoon ever. Who is here with me today, as always?
Here for more of Aunt Petunia's Pink Lemonade, it's Henry Gilbert.
And who is our special guest on the line?
I'm a Jew made of rocks. It's Mike Lawrence.
And this month we're talking about the Fantastic Four episode, When Calls Galactus.
I think the Hypno scanner has discovered the cause of your inflammatory transmogrification.
Hey, look, that's just peachy stretch out, but now why is she catching fire?
And of course, we are covering this cartoon in the name of synergy because Fantastic Four First Steps hits theaters next month, but maybe Henry and Mike can tell me if there's any other reason we're covering this cartoon.
I think after we had Mike on last year on Talking Simpsons, we asked, what he would want to do or if he ever want to come back. And this is what you named, was it not, Mike?
It is exactly what I named, the Fantastic Four. And preferably, I know we'll get into it, the second season. And this is a healing thing. I used to want to gravitate towards bad stuff, and now I realize I'm going to die someday and want to focus on good stuff. And I was like, let's do the second season. And it was between this and another great episode, but I figured with, the movie and Galactus and all of that, let's do this one.
Mm-hmm. It has a female Silver Surfer in the movie. This has the closest thing of a female Herald of Galactus in it as well. So, it's close. It's close.
I should let our listeners know that Mike and Henry know a lot about this topic. I'm sure our listeners know that Henry knows a lot, but Mike also knows a lot. And there was an email thread going on back and forth. You guys are trading trivia. I have no idea what's going on. I decided to be a little smart guy and react with a Bart Simpson saying, "Zuh?" image. Completely ignored. You go back to the conversation. So that's going to be my role in this podcast. I'm going to be the jock. I'll be sitting here reading my Terry Pratchett novel while you talk about this nerd shit.
Yeah, Bob's basically going to be an invisible woman this entire podcast.
I may become invisible on Zencaster. I'm here, though.
I thought that was a very funny thing, Bob, but I was too much like, but I got to keep telling Mike about this comic book.
You know why, Bob? Because we see Simpsons memes all the time. We very rarely find people that understand us.
That's
and
true.
I'm not going
That's
to
true.
give up a genuine bond and love for your dumbass Simpson meme. So why don't you just go back into the bushes?
If there was a bush behind me, I would just meld with it. But yes, I guess the Bart saying "zuh" thing is pretty basic, but you guys are getting into deep level Fantastic Four wisdom.
Yeah, Henry brought up the Tom DeFalco, Paul Ryan run. So, yes, we were.
Yes. Which was, I worked with a man named Paul Ryan, a very nice man. I worked with him in the video game media. And he was so used to people at the time going like, oh, you mean like that a-hole congressman? But I told him like, no, of course. I know you as the comic artist, the regular penciler of the Fantastic Four for most of my childhood. And he also responded with "zuh" until I alerted him to this.
Oh, man.
Who also had a great run on The Flash as well in the 90s, Paul Ryan.
Yeah. Very competent. The Ron Lim when Ron Lim wasn't available.
Yes, or a Paul Pelletier, perhaps. Sorry. Okay, enough of this. Sorry.
At some point, I will ask for a translation.
Those were comic book artists.
Got it.
Yeah, these are workman-like comic book artists who could hit their monthly deadlines, not too flashy, but all very good guys. Mike, me and you both are big comic nerds. You bigger than me. You out-trivia'd me on the last time we had you on. I shamefully got wrong the first appearance of the Blob and the Juggernaut. I mixed them up. And Ben Grimm, The Thing, is that your favorite superhero?
Absolutely. Yeah, and what's amazing, my son is 2.5, named Logan, which is not my favorite superhero. It's just Wolverine's more popular. And I already know someone who named their kid Ben after the Thing, but he purposely trolls me. There's this show for like preschoolers called Spidey and His Amazing Friends, and it's got the Hulk on it and it's got the Thing. But anytime I have a shirt with the Thing on it, he goes, Hulk. And then he like does this like sinister grin. And I'll be like, Thing! It's like the coffee and beer thing in The Simpsons. THHU. Like, he knows that it pisses me off. And that's why he does it.
That's Ben Grimm's whole life is being overshadowed by the Hulk.
Yeah, even though he came first.
The Thing is my second favorite Marvel guy to Spider-Man. I won't pretend like, oh no, Spider-Man isn't my favorite. Of course, Spider-Man. But then again, like my favorite Transformer is Optimus Prime. Like I go with the mainstream ones. But The Thing is my second favorite right here. I brought with me for show and tell. I have my Thing action figure, recent purchase. This is from a set that is meant to emulate the toy line for this series, actually.
Yep.
But it was produced recently.
Yeah, and I have my Mezco Dr. Octopus just sitting to the side.
That's like a $200 toy, right?
He's 120, yeah.
Oh, okay.
I wasn't doing it for that, Henry. I was not.
I just got a big stuffed Seymour Skinner for my birthday, but I guess I can't talk about The Simpsons on this podcast.
No, I love that Seymour. You finally scored him and that you couldn't win. No one can win at a Universal Studios.
Did you just buy him?
Oh, my wife got me this Skinner for my birthday. It is a prize at one of the most rigged carnival games you can ever play at Universal Studios. But I guess some Canadian won it, and we bought it. So now it's in our home.
That's amazing that the strictest, most least fun character in The Simpsons is a carnival prize.
Yes. We had the same opinion, and I don't know why it was made, but we both needed to have it in our home. And
It's
about
beautiful.
it's about the height of a 4-year-old.
It's surprisingly tall, but yeah, because he has to fit the size of a carnival game prize, which also makes them look kind of cheap, even though they are like a $40 stuffed toy, like all stuffed toys are at a theme park. Mike, I think, The Thing, I'd say he's probably still the most famous canonically Jewish superhero, too, I think. I mean, some say, like, Superman, created by two Jewish men, and it is, the Moses myth, and he certainly is, figuratively Jewish. But the thing has been bar
because he
mitzvahed.
landed in Kansas and was accepted. I would say no.
So that would make Ben Grimm the number one Jewish superhero.
I would say, over Kitty Pryde, most Jewish superhero. Magneto probably most Jewish character because of the films and how heavily they rely on that as a part of his origin. Which is interesting because, I got in a big argument with somebody about, they're thinking about Denzel being, Magneto. And it was it has to be a white guy because Magneto is Jewish. And I'm like, I don't know. I think I could buy Denzel playing someone who is a part of a oppressed group of people.
Yeah, well, and also a really great Thing miniseries recently was written by the creator of the Easy Rollins novels, Walter Mosley, who is a black Jewish man. He always said The Thing was his favorite growing up too because he's both Jewish and The Thing is non-white. That's the joke in the comic. The Thing even says when he's making a Tinder profile, basically he's race and he puts non-white is what he put on there.
Well, I think only The Thing has appeared on a Hanukkah card, right?
Oh, yeah.
We've all seen it. It's the Jack Kirby one, right?
Yeah.
It's perfect. Yeah. I love that.
If I had to say the reason he's my favorite is he helped me connect with my Jewish roots. And that was a cool thing of I am. And so is he. But also he's almost impossible to get wrong. I mean, Josh Trank did it, but barely anyone does.
Yes.
Do you remember there's a scene in that movie where, his famous phrase, it's clobberin time, is what his brother says when he's going to beat him up.
That is right. Yes.
Yeah,
It's clobbering
yeah.
time is what's said while he's being beaten.
But outside of that, it's if you just have a little bit of a Jimmy Durante voice and, you're hopeful despite being sad, that's the thing. He's always that guy no matter where you put him. And I think he has this feeling of being a cartoon character in a 3D world. There is a Roger Rabbit-esque, with the oversized hands and feet. And I think that, he just looks like right before the Fantastic Four, Jack Kirby just drew all these monster books, and he just looks like one of those monsters. But the fact that he chose to be good, he's the prototype for every like surly, grumpy superhero. Like, I don't think you get Wolverine without the Thing.
Oh, no, no. Well, also, I think the Thing and Spider-Man both have such great sense of humors and self-deprecating ones that I think they both are real magnets for comedians or comedy writers or comedy fans. And though I also love that the Thing, and this goes back to the earliest Stan and Jack pages, that the Thing always like has so much like self-esteem issues. And some of my favorite panels are when Alicia Masters is his regular girlfriend, now current wife in the comics. Like, she doesn't call him right when they planned on it. So immediately the thought balloon comes up like, she's probably stepping out on me with another guy. And who can blame her? I'd hate to be with me too. I'm the worst ugly. Like, it's relatable. Hashtag relatable.
I would like to zoom out for a second here. What is the Fantastic Four?
Oh, sorry.
Okay, so the Fantastic Four, do you want to take this, Henry?
Well, okay, so the Fantastic Four, a comic book series, the first big one of the Silver Age. You know what? Let's start with the cartoon series. I did see this because it came out when superhero cartoons were at their peak, and the first season debuted when I was 12. Perfect time for the toys and the TV show. But even I knew it was not a very good cartoon in the first season.
This was syndicated. I believe this played at 7 a.m. in my affiliate station in South Florida. So you had to wake up early to see it. It was paired with an Iron Man cartoon when they tried to make Iron Man a thing in 1994. And this guy, Ron Friedman, who has the most insane IMDb, he did the first season of both of these shows. They both had Stan Lee doing intros. Yeah, they were not very good, but the Fantastic Four itself, yeah. So,
oh, I mean, I got a whole history, but
well,
yes,
I want to explain the Silver Age first, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Because Bob said, and I agree with this, anytime there's a thing, he's like, well, if Bob doesn't know it, there are probably a lot of people that don't know it because you're very
in many cases I do know, but I am speaking for the general audience who might not know it. But I'm sure a lot of people are going to be seeing this for the first time when they see the movie in a month.
Yeah. So Stan Lee, he gets hired by his
his uncle.
No, his wife's cousin.
That's right.
Yeah, or his wife's cousin's husband or something. Yeah, Martin Goodman. In the early 40s. And the Golden Age is often considered to be started in Action Comics #1 with Superman. Like, the big difference between Marvel and DC is that DC continuity begins in 1938. Marvel continuity begins in 1961 with the Fantastic Four. You know, there is Captain America, the first Human Torch, but mostly, like, this is the beginning of it where comic books get a little bit more bright. You know, there was basically the witch hunt in 1954 with Frederick Wortham, the Comics Code and all of that. The Flash comes out in DC in 1956. Then you get the Green Lantern, Hal Jordan. And the story that Stan Lee always tells about the Fantastic Four. Stan Lee is a massive liar, but I also am a fan of pro wrestling, so his lying never surprises me because I've listened to Hulk Hogan for 40 years. But one of his, I think this is a bullshit lie. He was about to quit comic books. And his wife told him, why don't you try and write the book you want to write? And his publisher was saying that he went to a golf game and another publisher was bragging about how well the Justice League was doing. So he had to write a team book. That was his thing that he got from his publisher and from his wife. Write the thing you want. He combined those two, and the Fantastic Four came out. I don't think Stan Lee was ever going to quit comic books.
No. I thank you, Mike. That actually skips like 2 pages of my notes here. I seriously wrote down the Flash and Green Lantern and Justice League first appearance, like all these things. So, yes.
Well, I would like to know how we're all coming at this, because for me, this was not on in my area. It was not syndicated, so I didn't see it. I probably wouldn't have watched it because I was more Batman, Gargoyles, that kind of vibe. And then I never got on board with this because the movies came out and they were bad. And also, my closest acquaintance with this IP is watching the Venture Brothers parody, which is amazing. It's a first season episode, I think like episode 2 or 3. And after watching that, I thought I could never take this seriously, the source material, because it was so like perfectly lampooned. What I knew about it was so perfectly parodied in that episode. Ice Station Impossible, was that it?
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah, with the Impossible. And also, you would have seen on Dexter's Lab and on The Tick
Yep.
mocking the Galactus as well. Both had like
Yes.
full-on Galactus parodies.
Yeah, I think it was a case of having seen decades of parodies and not really knowing about the source material. So I'm familiar with the leader of the crew, Monkey D. Luffy, and his wife, Captain Invisible, and all the rest.
Well, yeah, it's interesting. The Tick, it's like that one was so close that I don't even think when they resold it, like you can get it because that is the Mole People one. They were so afraid of getting sued by Marvel.
Well, hey, fortunately, eventually they bought Fox and have the rights to those Tick cartoons now, and so they could re-release them.
Well, I interviewed for the Amazon Prime version of The Tick, and I didn't get it. And I just wanted, it was Ben Edlund, and it's like, it's hard to be a fan of something still when the creator of it tells you you don't understand it.
Damn.
That is
Ouch.
the thing about getting into show business and all of that is it's much harder to watch stuff once you're rejected by some of the stuff. I had this pitch for a realistic version of Chairface Chippendale where it was a little person inside of like a mech suit. And he just looked at me and was like, well, I got another interview in 5 minutes.
Oh. They should change the expression from never meet your heroes to never get interviewed by your heroes for a job.
Yeah.
I was so up for this when it debuted because I came at the Fantastic Four as a new fan of the comics, and I got to give credit to the Marvel editorial team for having the Fantastic Four appear in comics that I liked, and then making me check out the Fantastic Four because, Spider-Man's my favorite guy, and the first superhero team Spider-Man ever teamed up with is the Fantastic Four. They're good friends. I also was reading the early run of the comic New Warriors, and the Fantastic Four appear in that several times, as does Terrax, so I love this episode too. So it got me, and then as mentioned in that email exchange, that Trial of Galactus trade paperback, that was one of the first trades that wasn't the collections of old comics, that wasn't starring Spider-Man that I owned, and I read it all of the time.
Yeah, for me, it goes back to the trading cards. Like I would see, I was already reading some comics and stuff, but especially at the age of 9, the Joe Jusko Marvel masterpieces. They're like 100 painted artwork cards. And these things made comic books feel like the most important stuff there ever was. And of course, Marvels would come out 2 years later, which is also painted. And the Fantastic Four have always had this sense of Americana to them. I think the part of my brain, like my son already loves cars. I've never been into cars. I think the part of me that's supposed to love cars and history and, Kennedy and all that stuff has just gone to the Fantastic Four. And I remember my dad and my brother loved football together and I could never get into it, but he would take time to talk to me about the Silver Surfer, who was his favorite superhero, and the Fantastic Four. And when we would go to comic shops, that's what he would get. And I could read it. And it always, my dad passed 2 years ago. So it's the way that people, are still into this movie that's coming up is my Chicago Cubs World Series. I need to believe it's going to win. Because I was one of those people, one of the first things I did on the internet after going on the Springfield nuclear power plant, the second place I went was to look up the 1994 Roger Corman Fantastic Four movie. And I remember getting it and having a viewing party that I was the only person that stayed for the whole thing. Everyone else left because it's a really bad movie. But these are my guys. And I think that when you talk to sports fans, they pick a team, even if it's, the Cleveland Browns, even if it's someone that everyone perceives as losers. I think that's even more special. It's easy to love the Yankees or the Lakers or whatever, but to pick the ones that everyone makes fun of and be like, no, I'm going to stick with them no matter what. That's me in the Fantastic Four.
Yes, the Fantastic Four history that Mike mentioned there was another bit I wanted to say, which there's the Stan Lee story, which you heard a million times. My mom very nicely once got me the gift of going to a Stan Lee public interview, and we went together, and I love it, and it was a very nice gift. But I did mention to her, or after about 2 questions, I was like, oh, I know every answer he's going to say. These are all the canned replies he's been giving, and in 30 years of interviews, he will say nothing new here because Stan Lee has just lived his life as character Stan Lee for my entire lifetime.
Yeah, we just did an episode of our show Nerd of Mouth, which is the people versus Stanley, the trial of Stanley, where I argue his merits. One of my co-hosts, Jake Young, argues against him. There was a Kickstarter video about his elder abuse and everything. And I remember talking to someone, and the first thing they said was, he deserves it. Because people hate Stanley so much now, where they're like, he's a thief, he stole from Kirby. And I think the Fantastic Four is really a book that only works because of the best of both of their abilities.
Yeah.
The way that Stan Lee made comic books is he would, come up with a plot, often with the artist, and then they draw the entire comic book, and then he comes back and he just, he mystery science theaters it. he ad-libs the dialogue, but I think the dialogue was light years ahead of anything the competitors had. And Jack Kirby was, he was insane. Like, he just drew the Silver Surfer because he was like, well, if this guy's so big, he probably needs someone to help him.
With Stan and Jack as two creators, like, I went back and read a bunch of old FFs as in the run-up to this, and Kirby is the greatest American comic artist of all time, I think, or at least the most important, I'd say. But he was doing 4 books a month or more sometimes. And so in those pages, I'm seeing, for example, Daredevil hits the thing so hard he falls over. And then I'm like, that shouldn't happen. But clearly Kirby doesn't know what Daredevil's powers are. And so it was Stan Lee's job to write a line of dialogue of the thing saying, he took me by surprise and I was off balance. That's to explain all this stuff that Kirby forgot to draw right or had no time, which again, he's doing all-nighters, killing himself. He'll be dead in his mid-60s. Yeah. Like, it's not Kirby's fault. I don't want to hold him to too high a standard because he was the greatest.
And they needed each other. Like, you needed him to be at that drawing table 20 hours a day, and you needed Stan to sell the books.
Yes.
And I do think that this is their greatest work, the Fantastic Four. And the Galactus saga, which comes out 1966, I believe, issues 48 to 50, it really does change everything. Like, it's interesting that we're getting this now on the big screen in the MCU when you don't have Thanos without this. You don't have all of these cosmic ideas and big, universe spanning plot lines without this story.
Yeah, it was like the first multi-part thing. So many comic stories back then. You can see it even in not just DC, but in the first Spider-Man books too. Like, they're chapters, or it's like, well, there's 2 adventures in this story, and they're like, 8 pages long, and the story's done. You didn't do month-to-month major storylines like that then. Yeah. So the world's greatest comic magazine is a big hit. It starts like in 61. It rebirths superheroes at Marvel. It creates the Marvel Age of Comics. By 62, Stan Lee, Jack Kirby, and several others are creating all of the superheroes that own entertainment for the last 20 years. And around 1966, Jack Kirby has the honor of having his comic books redrawn with no payment and put into a cartoon show that entirely just steals his art as the first Marvel cartoon. In 1967, Hanna-Barbera gets to make the first Fantastic Four series, which at the very least has at the end in the credits, based on ideas by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby, no money, but at least the names.
And with artwork so bad, Jack Kirby's like, can you just steal my stuff? Can you just please? It's very Hanna-Barbera. It's, there's a charm to that series, the 67 one. It is a bit of a slog. And I think a lot of the weirdness and quirkiness of the Fantastic Four, like in issue 2 of the Fantastic Four, the way that Reed Richards beats the Skrulls is with comic books. He shows them Marvel comic books and says, this is what everyone on Earth looks like. And it's just the monster comics. And so they don't come to Earth. The 4 that were already on Earth get hypnotized into being cows, which in the 90s they would get turned into hamburgers and create a whole thing. But the fact that in issue 2, they're already being self-referential and very silly, clever, fun stuff. There's a Twilight Zone element to a lot of the early stories. Issue 7, Prisoners of Planet X, is one of my favorite ones. They go to a planet and it's dying, and Reed shrinks everybody. And he promises there's going to be an enlarging gas. and the villain is looking for the enlarging gas and everything, and it turns out there isn't one because size is relative. They'll just go to a planet where they are larger than everybody else.
They're full of insane things again because they're written week to week or month to month, and and they got deadlines. But so the FF cartoon from Hanna-Barbera only lasts a season, likely canceled in the similar action cartoon backlash we talked about in Itchy and Scratchy and Marge, as you remember that one. But so then by mid 1970, Jack Kirby has had enough of working with Stan Lee. Also, it should be noted too, Jack Kirby, like 4 years before the Fantastic Four came out, did a series called Challengers of the Unknown at DC, which is pretty similar to Fantastic Four. So I think that's in the mix too of another reason why he's annoyed at Stan. So the FF keeps going, but they don't get another cartoon until 78, which is following like a new blossoming of superhero stuff because Wonder Woman's got a TV show in 75, Hulk in 77, Superman movie 78. So DePatie Freeling gives it another shot with FF, an even worse show, which, Bob, maybe you remember seeing the Magneto episode. That was in several YouTube poops, I remember back then.
Oh, I'm sure I remember clips of it. We covered what was the old Marvel thing we covered from the 70s?
Oh, man, what was that? Oh, well, it was early 80s, the Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends.
Okay,
that one.
Got it.
Yeah, it's which is definitely better than the 78 FF, which had no Human Torch in it, which the nerdy thing here, some people say, oh, it's because they were afraid kids will light themselves on fire. No, it is because Marvel gave up the TV rights to Universal for the Human Torch in the same deal for the Bill Bixby Hulk, and so they couldn't have the Human Torch in there for that reason. Urban legend.
I assumed it's because fire has to be animated constantly, and they're like, we don't want to do that.
Well, I mean, in both series, the Hanna-Barbera one and DePatie Freeling, they're like, how many rocks is the thing made of? 6, right? Like, it's only like 6 rocks. Like,
you didn't even go into Fred and Barney Meet the Thing.
Yes.
Henry's
Bob
aware
knows.
of this. He has an
I'm
element
sure he's
of
aware.
that. Yeah.
I have a cell of Fred and Barney Meet the Thing, of the interstitial for that series, which came the next year. Because after that show gets canceled for DePatie Freeling, Hanna-Barbera scoops up the rights, but only for the Thing. And that's where you get Thing Ring, Do Your Thing.
Wait, is that 79?
That's 79.
I always assumed that was earlier, but yeah, okay.
When Fred met the Thing, was he like, it's like I'm looking in a mirror? And they were doing the mirror improv practice move.
Man, they're so close. And one is 61, 162. I think the Flintstones are 62. I think they're so close. They're the same guy, yes.
But Bob, I think Fred and Barney's minds melted because here's a guy made of rocks, but his name's the Thing, and you can't do a rock-based pun on his name. So they're like, what? How does he fit into our society?
Well, I'm reading here that Fred Flintstone predates the Thing by 2 years.
Oh, well, hell, man. Well, there you go. Congratulations, Fred Flintstone.
But there were a lot of cigar chompers of that era.
One sounds like he would beat his wife, and the other definitely did.
So, yes, and Fred and Barney and the Thing only met each other, despite the name of it, only meet each other in the opening to the show and in the interstitials, which, yes, I have a cell of Fred, Barney, and the Thing dancing like a chorus line from the interstitials, which are lost to time because while this show got rerun on Cartoon Network and Boomerang for a while, it is now stuck between being half owned by Warner and half owned by Disney, so nobody gets to see it these days. So the 80s, the Fantastic Four get no cartoons. They do have some really great comics under John Byrne especially. We were talking about how he does great comics in the 80s and is also an insane man who should not be on the internet, John Byrne.
There's a reason his fans, we call ourselves Burn victims. Yeah, there's a Facebook group I'm in that calls itself that. And I was calling myself that independently for years, that it was nice to find other people with the same pun. Yeah.
And they were a big part of the Secret Wars comic I loved as a kid. But I was shocked to be reminded, in my mind, I would have said they definitely had toys in the line. No, the FF did not have toys in the Kenner Secret Wars line. They were left out of it. I have no clue why.
I think it was that you would need new molds. You would have to have a new mold for the Thing. And they were not doing that. I believe the same body buck was used for all of the figures. Don't you hate when you could come up with a creative reason why something happens and it's always the most boring answer?
Okay, so Also in the 80s, Stan Lee signs a terrible deal with German studio Constantine Film to make a Fantastic Four movie that will cause gigantic problems for the rest of time for the Fantastic... Well, at least until Bernd Eichner, the German who got the rights, dies at some point and gives it up. And Stan Lee made a similar bad deal with Golan Globus for a Spider-Man movie that it took like decades of lawsuits to get around. The FF, though... They're kind of left out of the 90s comic boom a little bit, like, because they didn't have Jim Lee, Rob Liefeld, Todd McFarlane. None of them worked on the Fantastic Four. They had Paul Ryan, who is the opposite of Todd McFarlane, a boring artist who has workmanlike quality.
This is also the one image I remember, speaking of Image Comics and Todd McFarlane and all that, is at the end of Spider-Man 300, he goes to, like, all the Venom stuff is always tied to Reed Richards, because he like examines the symbiote and all of that, and he drops off the symbiote to the Thing. And this is at a time when the Thing was like very spiky. And
yeah.
Tom McFarlane, I think, had to draw him that way for 2 panels and was like, yeah, I'm not doing this again.
Not to mention that by the early 90s, most people know that Jack Kirby has legitimate, hurt feelings and anger towards the Fantastic Four. It's just kind of a bummer, the FF at the time. And so meanwhile, Marvel, we've covered this so much, but the short version is, Batman gets a new animated series that is incredibly groundbreaking in 1992. It moves forward things so much. It's night and day, the 1992 Batman show, compared to even like a 1988 Superman cartoon by Ruby Spears, for example. And then meanwhile, the X-Men cartoon, while not the quality of Batman, also is hip and cool. And it is the Jim Lee character designs like on the screen. Like, these are hot properties. And so with those success, Marvel Productions is going to be pitching more cartoons, and Saban Entertainment had the rights to the X-Men cartoon, and then they're going to be pitching the Spider-Man cartoon as well. That will, natural continuation. And Toy Biz is getting more and more involved. The Toy Biz are the toy makers of Marvel action figures. Eventually will be so successful at it, they will be able to buy a bankrupt Marvel company in its entirety. But so, of course, they're looking for... We need more cartoons that can then sell toys. This is a toy line cartoon combo is what they are hoping to do. So they're looking at all their superheroes, and they decide they're going to double dose it, and they're going to self-finance the whole thing. No Chaim Saban or Fox Kids involved in this. This is going to be a Marvel Films animation production or New World Animation. They had a couple names, but it's going to be an entire Marvel production for good and bad.
Which the plus is... very limited amount of Canadians, and I have nothing against Canada. I just don't like cinematic universes where everything takes place there. Sorry, CW. But the X-Men, it's like they fired the one American actress who was Storm in the first season to have them be all Canadian. And look, if they were doing these things to make the show better, okay, but they never did. It was always because of SAG, cheapness, and I'm a WGA, I'm a SAG, so therefore I have to be anti-Canada. Sorry, Bob.
That's okay. I mean, I like that we get better, more well-known voice actors in a production like this, like Tony Jay. I didn't know he was Galactus. Always great to hear him.
Yeah, it's a real LA production, but yeah, don't speak ill of the Arrowverse, Mike. That's Bob's entire neighborhood is the Arrowverse location.
We're everything. We're Yellow Jackets, Last of Us, Arrowverse. So help me, Todd. Throw him in there.
And one day a studio will choose to have filmed there.
Oh, also Upload. We are the location of Upload. Season 4 coming soon.
Yeah, I remember on season 1, pitching locations and all of that, and just being told, well, we have this and this available. I was like, okay.
So Marvel has decided they're going to do another, like Spider-Man is already being worked on for a fall 94 debut. And that already has a ton of problems. Listen to our Spider-Man 94 podcast on that. But that is doing swimmingly compared to the production.
Or listen to John Semper Jr. tell you how John Semper Jr. saved it. Single-handedly.
John Semper Jr. is the most important person who has ever worked in animation. I love hearing his stories, but yes, they're very biased.
He is the hero in all of them.
So while they're working on this, I pulled up Marvel Age comics. Well, Marvel Age was a magazine, Bob, back in the 90s that was basically, they make you pay for it, but it was like the Nintendo Power of Marvel back
So
then.
it was kind of like an in-house wizard.
Exactly, yes, yeah. I'd say only 5% more propagandistic than Wizard Magazine was.
Thank you. I did mean an actual wizard for the listeners out there who don't know what wizard is or was.
And so in the Marvel Age magazine, there's several fun things in it, but one of them is they talk about how this was the choice of both Stan Lee and Avi Arad, who already was the head of Marvel Films Animation at the time. The vice president, he's described in the article as the chief creative force behind Marvel Films and Toy Biz. And you know, Avi Arad, a lot of problems with him, but back in the 90s, every other executive was so stupid that Avi Arad, being the guy who goes into a meeting and says, Spider-Man's worth $1 billion, stupid, like that makes him the good executive in these stories. He's also why we have terrible movies like Kraven the Hunter and Morbius, but, you know, the ups and downs with Avi Arad.
I just love the idea that while they're making this is when Jack Kirby dies. It's like he felt something.
Yes.
He knew. His cosmic awareness was like, time to get the fuck out.
It is very sad that he passed away. I'm so sad he passed away before he could have actually like started appearing in things and getting, but like if you were to draw Jack Kirby not smoking a cigar, it would be entirely incorrect. It would be a cinema sin, a flaw. Like he was always smoking and working all night long.
He dies like maybe 7 or 8 months before this. It's like, you know, when we had adopted a black son, if my grandma had already not been dead, that would have killed her. And possibly Jack Kirby too. No, he would be good with him. Yeah. You know, Stan wanted to call him the White Panther,
and then unnamed him to the Black Leopard. But
the original name was Cole Tiger.
Whew, I forgot that one.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So they pitched the Marvel Action Hour, and it's going to have two of the weaker titles of the 90s, but major ones in Marvel history: Iron Man and the Fantastic Four. Again, I have to remind people who just got into comics in the last like less than 20 years, Iron Man was not cool and not interesting. Nobody liked him. He was not a cool guy at all or popular.
And to talk about the popularity of the Fantastic Four one more time, like a lot of the big ideas like Black Panther, you know, Galactus, like Doom has become Marvel's villain and he's about to, you know, be massive. He was an FF guy. Like it's hard to remember that there was a time when you would put the Fantastic Four in other people's books to sell them. Like Amazing Spider-Man #1 has the Fantastic Four on it because they know more people will buy it because they're in the book. That was the weirdest thing to me as like, you know, watching the MCU, knowing that Spider-Man now is so unpopular that they put Iron Man in his movie.
Yes.
To
Iron
sell
Man
tickets.
Boosts him.
Yeah.
God.
Yeah.
Oh. Stan Lee put it in 1994, the FF just seemed natural. They were our first characters. And Avi Arad said, FF is funny, imaginative, intelligent. Iron Man is very today. Each one covers a different area of our universe, and we're looking for versatility. And even in their own press releases, they were like, don't worry, guys, this isn't going to have Herbie the robot in it. Like, they're dissing the 78 cartoon when it's like, your cartoon is going to suck too, guys. Like, you're in a glass house here, and you're throwing bricks.
Yeah, your cartoon starts with a two-parter where the framing device is a Dick Clark interview.
Yes. Like actually Dick Clark. Like,
yes.
Yeah. So what happened with this show, or what were the problems? Well, veteran Ron Friedman was hired as story editor on both series. So there's your problem right there. They were treating it as one 26-episode series order, not two separate 13-episode series. So Ron Friedman, who honestly I don't think, if you gave him the perfect scenario, wouldn't have written an amazing show. But if you give him a horrible scenario, he's really not going to do good work.
Well, and he is a Paul Ryan or Ron Lim himself in that. Yeah, you look at his credits, he's a journeyman. And I think when people work as much as this guy does, you don't take the time and like you said, he's doing too, you don't have the bandwidth to make it its own thing. It's like, you know, so he's just, this is like the ultimate mercenary job for this guy. And I would imagine, like, when you look at his resume at this point, the shows that he used to be on, I mean, he was on like the top shows of the 60s and 70s as sitcoms. And they're not hiring Ron Friedman anymore.
Yeah.
And he doesn't know how to write for Roseanne and Married with Children and all of these other 90s shows, and probably, Iced Out at The Simpsons. I mean, he was probably a guy that was in power that kept some of the guys that were in power in the 90s from getting hired. He was their Ben Edlund.
I would like to look up his Gilbert Gottfried podcast appearances. But yeah, I think too, he was a Marvel Productions guy in the 80s. Stan Lee liked him. He wrote a memoir called I Killed Optimus Prime. Like, that's one of his claims to fame. So, like, I think he didn't get the memo. Batman has changed everything. Batman, the animated series, if you make an 80s style show like this one, it looks ancient next to a 1994 episode of Batman. I love this clip here. Ron Friedman gave a very honest interview on his career to the Academy of Television. And here's one of the reasons he said this show didn't go well.
It was really a rat fuck, very difficult to do because they were doing Spider-Man at the same time, animating Spider-Man. And I had to come up with 26 episodes to show by a certain date. And so it was really difficult to hold on to the money for it. And I ended up being the story editor and writing all the scripts, rewriting 2 of them. And I was also the acting art director. And I didn't sleep for days, but finally I got everything done on time, under budget. And then it played at 4 o'clock in the morning in Detroit, and it played in the cadaver room of the hotel. It was just all over the place.
So there you go. It was a rat fuck, he said.
And I guess he was in his 60s when he was doing this, so this is a young man's job to be spinning all these plates, not Ron Friedman.
He's 92 now, and I'm looking at his resume. So, Gilligan's Island, The Andy Griffith Show, All in the Family, Barney Miller, Happy Days, and then you get to, 1983, G.I. Joe. Then he's doing, Transformers. You don't leave union sitcom work. And I'm sorry to say this on a show called What a Cartoon, but if your career is going very well, you don't switch to cartoons. Mm-hmm. Because that's the next logical step to take it to a higher level. And then I see the last live action thing he did was the new WKRP in Cincinnati, which lasts a season. That gets canceled, and he has to go back to cartoons because that is in between G.I. Joe, A Real American Hero, and the Fantastic Four and Iron Man. The last job this guy had was Tasmania.
Wow, that's a long time ago.
Yeah.
I mean, him also saying that Spider-Man stole his money, it's like, I could totally, hey, if I'm Avi Arad and I'm seeing the stuff coming in, it's like, you know what, take $20,000 from Fantastic Four and give it to Spider-Man. That's what I'm betting the money on. Like, that's going to sell more toys anyway.
I know there's this one story of, I think it's John Semper Jr. who says it, where he took over, they fired someone, they needed him to come in and save the show. And he was like, there was a Hobgoblin episode that they had to write. And he goes up to Avi Arad, he's like, in the comic books, Green Goblin predates the Hobgoblin by like 20 years. And Avi just goes, we already have the action figure made. You're doing Hobgoblin.
I think we talked about that. We did a Hobgoblin episode, right, Henry?
Yeah, that's right. The Mutant Agenda one we did, yes.
Yeah, where Mark Hamill showed how little range he actually has.
What if I was a slightly different Joker? Well, actually, I'll just be the Joker again. How's that?
Yeah. He does a voice in this series, too, and he's only 70% the Joker as Maximus.
That's right. Yeah. In the second season. Yeah.
Also, the original art director was Glenn Hill, future Family Guy veteran and Disney TV guy, and but he was also having to be art director on FF and Iron Man at the same time. Again, like, that's bad. You don't do that. You're not going to get good results. I think partially so they didn't have to animate 30 more seconds of an episode. Stan Lee also did introductions for every episode. Let's hear one of Stan's intros.
And now, Mr. Marvel himself, Stan Lee.
Hi, true believers. You may think you know the origin of the Fantastic Four, but until you see the far-out version we have waiting for you, you've only scratched the surface. And no dyed-in-the-wool Marvelite wants to be a surface scratcher, right? But hey, not only will you see the world's favorite superhero team battling the pernicious puppet master, you'll also catch them starring on Dick Clark's TV show. How'd that happen? Don't touch your dial. You're about to find out. Enjoy.
Wow. So not only is he using modern slang like far out, he's also promising the kids a Dick Clark appearance.
Yep.
He's tapped into what 1994 was all about.
One of the things that was fascinating when we just recorded our Stanley episode was, I think it was Jake or holding it, but I think it was Jake. He said, I do believe this is true. The greatest creation of Stan Lee was Stan Lee. That if you look in the 60s, he's balding. And he looks like he's like 60 years old and he's only 40. The glasses, the hair, all of that stuff came later. And the what we know as the trademark Stan Lee look was, a thoroughly curated thing that's not what he looked like at all. And this version of him, the Uncle Stan, which had an effect on me more than other kids because both my grandpas were dead. There was this familiarity, and he's not gonna. It's like Camp Krusty, right? He's not gonna put his name on an inferior product. If he believes in it, I know I'm about to watch something good.
He's telling me that I don't want to be a surface scratcher. I might be half remembering this, but I do believe that on the X-Men 92 show, Stan wanted to do these kind of intros too, and Margaret Lash was like, no, you're not. Starts us on a bad foot here.
Well, he does an intro for Pride of the X-Men, right?
Yes.
He did do that, yes.
Yeah, when with Magneto and all that, but with the tanks. But when they did the Pizza Hut, is he in those? Don't they have Scott Lobdell?
Oh, they have a round table of guys in that. Yeah,
and Stan is one of them, right?
Yes, yeah. Pretending that Jack Kirby had not much to do with creating the X-Men.
I just showed up because I heard there was going to be free pizza.
The greatest pizza at Pizza. Okay, so though here's the other mistake I think they
Galactus likes the Earth for the same reason I like this pizza. It's got a stuffed crust.
Oh, that's good. Okay, but their big mistake I think too was they trusted Kennedy Toons to animate this season. Huge mistake. Bob, you're already shaking your head hearing the Kennedy Toons.
Yeah, I mean, they have a very distinct look about them. And if you can remember just the worst looking episodes of Tiny Toon Adventures in the world, you'll think of Kennedy cartoons. Also, they were all over a pup named Scooby-Doo. They kind of designed the look of that cartoon, how it moves. Everyone's doing their weird little kick dance all the time.
I would say, having listened to you guys talk about Kennedy Toon and watching... I was a big Darkwing Duck fan, and I know they did a few of those. Every character on this show looks like Mr. Fantastic.
Yes.
Everything's rubbery and
Kennedy Toons was on its way out at this point. I think they had burned every bridge they could, because they, well, not burned, but they weren't getting hired anymore. The year before this, they had their last Disney TV work on Bonkers. It's after Bonkers, no more at Disney.
There is no life after Bonkers. I like that in Hollywood, they were basically backed into the same corner that Ron Friedman was.
Yes. Yeah. The only place that'll hire me. This was the last trick Kennedy Toons had of Marvel Films animation is kind of new. We can trick them into telling them we can do an action show. And based on the credits on this, I think Kennedy animated at some percentage of this. And the first stuff starts coming back and they're like, shit. Then they have to basically send it all to Wang Films, their sub-studios, to finish season 1. And it just sucks. The opening is hideous, stretchy Glenn Kennedy stuff. It's just it's all. And I think Kennedy lied to them of and we'll save a bunch of money using digital compositing. Digital animation was not ready for TV yet. And that's why season 2, one of the many changes, they go back to ink and paint because this digital in the first season also looks very ugly.
Yeah, it kind of makes it hard to go back to the Spider-Man cartoon where the amount of CGI that they tried to use there, and it's those guys at Warner, they really knew what they were doing. Batman the Animated Series, where they could have done, and they did it in Justice League, and it kind of, the Javelin sucks and all that, but they knew back then, let's make this look timeless. This stuff is gonna feel like 1992 CGI.
And one other funny thing I learned from that Marvel Age article was that they thought they were going to put out an official album in the first season too of like music. Like they say in there that they were working with the band Foreigner to do a Doctor Doom song, which
perfect for 1994.
Yeah, the Foreigner's so hot in 1994.
And Brian Austin Green is the voice of the Human Torch on the first season. He does. I've seen this memed like a decent amount. The Flame On song, right?
Yes.
But this was when he was on Beverly Hills 90210. So they're like, we've got a big get here. We're going to get all the teenagers to watch this show.
It's funny because I'm rewatching Beverly Hills 90210 because We Hate Movies does a great podcast about that series, and it's so strange how that program is also trying to launch Brian Austin Green's music career. And to be fair, he's awful. If you look up his music, it's very, very bad. All these platforms believed in him. They're like, we have to elevate this. I think they were afraid of actual black rappers. So like, we need a white rapper.
Yeah.
Get him out there.
One of us. Yeah, it's like Beverly Hills 90210 is like Christianity. If you didn't grow up with it, you're never going to get it.
So 2 of those songs did survive into the show. One of them is Green Jelly. They did a song, It's Clobberin' Time. Here's a little bit of that.
White crime takes all of my time. I'm so pretty with a funky rhyme. What time is it? It's clobberin' time.
And so on.
Green Jelly, writers of the Maximum Carnage soundtrack.
And the fact that Thing is able to enthusiastically sing a song about his brother abusing him is kind of an amazing, it's how you take pain and make it into art.
Also, the Human Torch song, Flame On, is crazy because they animated that it's like, and now the Johnny Storm's going to sing a song. And it's like he has a classic like 30s bandstand group behind him. But then in comes the like cutting edge 90s rap group Far Side to sing this song.
Now she's gone, gone unto another while I sing my funky song. I never pass up a chance, I know the story seems long, but when I know the time is right for me and you, I just flame on, and on and on and on.
And he's doing a version of the Kennedy kick dance while singing that too. So, yeah.
They were originally going to have Sue Storm sing a female coded version of Mr. Cellophane. Never know I'm there.
In Marvel Age, they thought they were going to get music videos for this, so more things fell through. But so let's talk about the voice cast real quick. We got Brian Austin Green, as mentioned before, replaced by the much better Quentin Flynn in this season, who's Raiden in the Metal Gear games and a million other things.
Yeah,
too.
I'm mostly familiar with this cast for their work in the Metal Gear series, honestly.
That's right. Well, yes, you got.
He's not in this episode, but Simon Templeman. I was a big Legacy of Kain Blood Omen fan, and he's Dr. Doom in this. And because I forget, the Dr. Doom in the first season is terrible, and they do like his origin is a 3-part
endless
saga,
endless.
and it is brutal. Yeah. It is brutal, but Simon Templeman in this show is incredible as Doctor. He's so sassy.
No, Neil Ross is Doom in season 1, which is such an 80s choice. Like, and I love Neil Ross. He's a G.I. Joe and Transformers veteran, but it wasn't the right tone for Dr.
He also
Doom.
wasn't given anything to work with,
No.
Yeah, it's not the actor's fault, but my favorite line in this series is Dr. Doom just, I think he calls the Thing or someone, "You primrose popping jay." And he just has a bunch of lines like that. Oh, God. It's like, he feels like he's like fat shaming Sue without having to say it. Like, because Dr. Doom in the comics is a massive fat shamer. He just calls like Miss Marvel a cow. He's such an asshole.
I love when he says to the Thing, like, "You're as stupid as you are gullible, Thing," or like, I should have realized you'd get that wrong, Reed. You get everything wrong. Like, also, I mean, Darth Vader is a total ripoff of Dr. Doom. Like,
Yes.
Darth, in so many ways. But so, Bob, you mentioned another Metal Gear vet. The boss herself is Sue Storm, Lori Allen.
That's right. And it's weird because when Metal Gear Solid 3 came out, I was also watching a lot of Family Guy reruns, and she plays the newscaster Diane on Family Guy, or she did. That character has been retired.
And to give Ron Freeman a little credit, yeah, like you said, Human Torch gets recast, but these other 3 stay the same from season 1. And they are very, very good at their roles. She is incredible in this cartoon. As the Invisible Woman, which in the comics, that was a big deal. That I think it's issue 284 where she goes from being called the Invisible Girl to the Invisible Woman. And at this time in the comics, Fantastic Four fans would be remiss if we did not mention, Henry, the boob window. Comic books were wanting to be edgy, like he was talking about, Image and those guys leaving. And the old guys that had to stay, they came up with this costume where the four is cut out of the shirt so you could see her cleavage.
Yes, yeah. Stomach revealed, shoulders, legs. It's basically like a very skimpy swimsuit is what she wore for several issues. Yes.
Yeah, it's how I discovered the word MILF.
Yes. I have seen through Facebook that Facebook constantly wants to show me like, oh, you looked at comic book stuff. Hey, here's a page from a 94 like Fantastic Four of her in her boob window, or here's a sexy page of Mary Jane from a 1993 issue of Spider-Man drawn by Bob Layton. But okay, the other voice actors for the leads are Bo Weaver, a real veteran, but you may know his voice from this.
And now, our feature presentation.
He's the guy who tells you it's time for a feature presentation on a Disney DVD or Blu-ray.
Wow. He is awesome in this. Yeah. Kudos to all these guys.
Another very old man cast in it is character actor and puppeteer Chuck McCann. He's the Amoeba Boys in Powerpuff Girls and Blinky and Pinky in the Pac-Man show, doing the exact same voice of, hey there, Pac-Man, you should get over here. He's got the power pellets. That same job he did.
Maybe it was my copy of this, but he was kind of hard to understand.
He seems like he's pinching his nose or something, right? Or,
by the way, if you want to see this, it's all on archive.org. Someone uploaded it.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Oh,
it's all on Disney Plus.
It's on Disney Plus too. I should have looked there first.
Yeah,
my first feeling was, well, this couldn't possibly be anywhere, right? But then I guess it's on Disney Plus.
No, yeah, it says it has it all as one season. So you got to look a little, lower for this one, for this episode, and skip past, but it's all on Disney Plus.
Though, except for one episode of season 1, which happens to feature a fantasy sequence where the Twin Towers explode. I can't tell you that's why it's not on Disney Plus, but these are two facts. That episode is not on Disney Plus, and it's the one where the Twin Towers
There's a shot with a lot of dramatic irony when the villain in this is flying towards the Twin Towers.
Yes.
So yes, what went wrong with season 1? Ron Friedman not only called it a rat fuck, but also he talks about how he had another funny story about how he wrote down a coffin is an important item Dr. Doom is trying to get, and he sends characters back in time for it. And within the same episode, it is drawn as a thing that holds jewels, you would call a coffin as well. But then in Act 1 of the episode, it is drawn as a full 6-foot tall coffin.
Yeah. So they drew a coffer and not a coffin.
Oh, okay. That's all right. That in his story, he said he wrote coffin twice.
Okay.
But, it's on at bad times. It's a total fuck show, and he didn't do a great job. Also, it had very bad time slots too. It was seen as so bad that in issue 396 of Fantastic Four, published in November of '94, just a couple months after this debuts, they are making fun of it, calling it a horrible, repulsive show that you'll be destroyed by the ratings. So they're making fun of it in the comic books.
Well, and, this was one of those shows, we always heard this phrase, right? Check your local listings. And because they would advertise this and Iron Man in some of the comics. And that's what it would say. That's if there's a show and they tell you what the time slot is, that's very helpful. But if you're making me work, if you're telling me I got to get through the cheers and jeers section of TV Guide to get to this, to find out when this thing's airing, I got to buy something to watch this?
You need a strategy guide to figure out when it's on television. Now, Henry, was this part of any kind of block? I know we covered the Bobot Entertainment Network. Was this part of some action pack thing?
The Marvel Action Hour.
Okay.
Marvel Action Hour, yes.
With Iron Man.
Yeah, the Marvel Action.
I wasn't sure if it expanded beyond that, but that was a syndicated block.
Well, that is the tale of season 2 of the show, because so basically Marvel is left with I think the toys for both Iron Man and Fantastic Four must have been doing all right because they got multiple waves. So once they decide they're going to keep the toys going, they're going to give it another season for both shows, except clean slate on both. Basically, it's almost like a soft reboot for season 2, though they still keep the same guy in charge of both shows. They just replace Ron Friedman. And Iron Man and FF both get a big improvement. The guy who replaces Ron Friedman is Tom Tataranowicz. I believe that's his pronunciation. He's a Bakshi, Hanna-Barbera, and He-Man vet. But most importantly for Marvel, He had just done 65 episodes of Biker Mice from Mars, which actually was very stable production that did well. So they're like, well, if you can handle Biker Mice from Mars, why don't you get in charge of both Fantastic Four and Iron Man?
That was another 7 a.m. in my, yeah. Tom Tataranowitz, like, just imagine the Thing having to say that name. We got regular Tom Tataranowitz over here.
In a 2007 interview with Toon Zone, Tataranowitz was very upfront that season 1 sucked ass and I needed to fix it. Like, I need to get rid of those light blue costumes. I need to get rid of the soft comedy. He needed to get rid of the nosy landlady who was played by Stan Lee's wife.
Oh, jeez.
He had to get rid of all these things.
Her name was Miss Muggins because that's what she was doing to the camera. She's a terrible character. I will say I like the light blue costumes.
You know, I'm not against it. I did always prefer. Now they're back to the light blue costume in the MCU, but I liked the black tones of the John Byrne. But maybe it's always about what you see first, right?
Yeah, that's fair. I love those too. The light blue costumes were not the problem with season 1.
Yeah. Bob, light blue or the dark blue?
Depends on how I'm feeling that day.
Indifference or apathy, Bob? What do you pick one?
I'm actually indifferent about both of those choices. So.
Yeah.
And Tataranowitz also made another important hire. He hired comic book legend John Buscema. Is it Buscema or Buscema, Mike? Buscema. He hired John Buscema as a consultant. He is like the guy who drew the book Stanley wrote of, how to draw comics the Marvel way.
Yeah. His brother Sal, who, if you ever wanted to see everyone made of blocks, just read any of his comics.
He draws some very blocky guys. He also, Sal Buscema, loved to draw Spider-Man's webbing as just one black line. And you know what? I like that style. I'm not saying it's bad, but
he had an obsession with spit. He would always love drawing someone getting punched like the mucus in their mouth stretching apart. It was very weird.
But his brother John Buscema, he kind of took over almost as art director in Marvel in the 70s.
He did a lot of Conan comics in the 70s, and he has I'd say like his best comics work is the Avengers. He did it in the 60s, and then he came back in the 80s and did it. One of the best Avengers stories, Under Siege, has beautiful John Buscema art.
Roger Stern written. I love that one. Oh,
yep.
Sorry, Bob. Okay. Sorry. Yeah. Back to the John Buscema, great guy to hire to redesign the characters and at least get them close to the comics. But another major hire they did was the venerable Larry Houston, one of the very few major black animators working in television back then. A big time. He was a huge part of the first 4 seasons of X-Men. And while he was ready to stay on for a 5th season of X-Men, they begged him to save Fantastic Four as basically the series director of season 2. And he grew up loving those comics. Larry Houston, a big comic nerd, grew up in Los Angeles. And he's the guy who takes the credit for how in the X-Men cartoons, you just see Deadpool or the Punisher or Black Panther or Spider-Man just appear. And he did it without ever getting proper clearance and honestly leaving himself at legal liability. He just did it because he's like, I want to see Deadpool in here. I'll just draw him in there. And he got away with it.
He's an awesome dude. I met him at a Comic-Con. A lot of these guys, and I know he worked a bit on X-Men 97, but the periods between work are long. If you have money and you go to these things, these are the people you should give it to. The people who built your childhoods. They don't get any residual checks from any of the work they did. But he was a sweet dude. And he signed a Logan print to my son Logan that he had drawn. And I mentioned the Fantastic Four season 2. I was like, you saved that show. Thank you so much. And he was like, it was a fun thing to work on. Those guys are like trained not to talk shit on anybody, which is a skill I wish I had.
He brought so much passion to this. You can really, I think the opening of the show has all of these references to classic covers because of guys like Larry Houston who really gave a shit. He's talked about it many times, but 2 of the things he loved most in season 2 is that he got, 1, the Inhumans, get a 3-parter. He loves the Inhumans, but he takes great pride in that he was the first to adapt the Black Panther for animation. Like he says, this is a tweet of his, Back when I was the director over on the second season of Fantastic Four, I got the opportunity to direct the first animated Black Panther episode, Prey of the Black Panther. My first and only choice was Keith David as T'Challa, and he has a great picture of him in the recording booth with Keith David in 94, 95, shaking hands. It's beautiful. And of course, who else? Of course Keith David's Black Panther. There's no other, that is the voice you pick for sure.
And it's clear they spent a lot of money on him because I believe Bo Weaver is Claw, because they had no other money to hire anyone else for this episode. And it just feels like Mr. Fantastic's arguing with himself.
And they also went to work with the Philippines Animation Studio. They replaced Wang on season 2, and they did a fine enough job. But, I mean, Bob, you've seen that, know that season 1 is full of so many, editing things to try to fix garbage, that this seemingly having very little editing and just being on ink and paint and budget friendly is so much better than the first season.
Yeah, my expectations were kind of low, honestly, and I thought this feels right. I don't see a lot of mistakes. There's no lip sync errors. Things don't seem too awkward. I know what they're working with, and they're spreading the money around as much as they can.
Yeah. And as someone, who loves these comics, there's a lot of stuff when we talk about the episode proper that they really try to stay true to. And I mean, I think, the MCU, I don't think has still truly properly done a love letter to Kirby. I think Thor was the most Kirby comic, and Asgard is so muted in those movies. And if there's one thing about Kirby, it's that his art pops. It just jumps at you. And I think that this show probably did a better job than just about anyone else, at least at the time.
I am hopeful for first steps. Those trailers feel more of the Kirby feel for sure.
And to set it in the 60s, it is like Cap in the 40s. The 60s is the space race, just hope is built into these people. The idea that, well, if you do get superpowers, there is no question of what you do with them. You help humanity because it's 1961. That's what we do. And everything is great on Earth and all humans are happy and we treat each other with respect because it's 1960. Okay, I'll stop.
Yeah. So the season 2 goes along okay, though.
It's desegregating time.
He said that on steps of the Supreme Court.
The first steps. No. Hey, Brown, I'll help you beat the Board of Education.
Them crumb bums.
So it's going to be the Thing versus Joe Biden in their first adventure.
So, season 2 must go all right, though it also does have a clip show in it, which does tell you money must have run out at some point. A clip show that has only speaking lines from 2 actors in it. Oh, and they did get Kathy Ireland in season 2. They also got her as Crystal.
A clip show of a 13 episode.
That's like season 2 of The Critic.
I know. It's a clip show that ignores season 1. They're like, well,
it totally does. What's amazing is it's The Critic. That clip show, was that the last episode? Because this is the second to last episode.
That's the finale. That's the last TV episode of The Critic. At least Milton Berle is there, but not good.
Because I love, the last episode of Fantastic Four was a Doctor Doom, it's based on a Silver Surfer. It was issues 57 through 60. They don't have any of that in the clip show. It's like they could have used more clips. They have multiple clips in the clip show from the same episodes.
Yeah, I'm not saying that season 2 didn't have its problems, but hey, that Critic clip show also in 1995.
Hey.
It was just happened. So they had hoped. Ted Aronowitz did say he had wished for a season 3. He was hoping to do Sue Richards' pregnancy and the birth of Franklin Richards, as well as This Man, This Monster, which if you'd asked me before we were picking episodes, I would have said, oh, well, we got to do the This Man, This Monster episode that they surely must have done, but they didn't, which is it's the best Thing comic that Jack Kirby did, I would say. Even though technically he's only in half of it. An unnamed guy replaces the Thing. I just read it. He doesn't say what his name is even. They're just well, whoever that guy was.
They name him later. He is Ricardo Jones. And Alex Ross, if you do love the Fantastic Four, you even want to just give it a shot. He wrote and drew a comic a few years ago called Full Circle, which is the sequel to This Man, This Monster. It is gorgeous.
All right. I'm doing this. I'm giving that a read. See, again, I'm getting beat here in my internal trivia contest against Mike.
Well, I'm always coming in last place, Henry, so you at least get second.
So,
But it's funny. I've listened to episodes of your guys' shows, and then those are the ones I prefer sometimes where I don't get anything. You know, life is about having moments where you win and having moments where you lose. The moments where you lose are in things that don't matter. It's totally okay. Is there a part of you, Bob, that's like, man, I wish I knew more about the Fantastic Four?
Well, no, to be honest, but
I'm
learning. Okay. It's a learning process. I'm engaged. I'm learning, playing with a little toy while you guys are talking, so it's all good.
Bob, you did read a few of the Claremont Byrne Uncanny X-Men run.
I did.
So you know the writer of this, the original comic of this episode, John.
It's true, and we all have gaps in our knowledge. Like I could quiz Henry on Nero Wolfe mystery series; he wouldn't have anything to say.
Oh man, yeah, I'm at a loss here. Hercule Poirot. I've watched a couple movies about him.
Was Nero Wolfe the fat one?
He was the fat one.
Yeah. Okay, that's what I know.
The show gets canceled. They decide not to go on with it. Instead, pretty much all the production guys just move straight over to the Incredible Hulk show, which also has Fantastic Four characters like appear in it. There's a Hulk episode in season 2 that's almost like a Hulk pilot program. Like Rick Jones is in it too. Like, so it's kind of them testing the waters.
And Simon Templeman goes over to the Hulk, and he's on there. And I believe the Hulk was a Sunday show on UPN, but it had a time slot. I think it was like 11 or something where I was, but it had many things that the Fantastic Four was never given.
And also, it was written a bit more maturely, comparatively. Like it was about it's hard to be the Hulk, more sadness and depression in it. And also the FF characters would make minor appearances in the Spider-Man show. The only Quentin Flynn would return to is his voice actor in the Spider-Man abbreviated Secret Wars storyline.
Yeah, it's kind of a bummer because. And I think they go back to the light costumes for that, variation of them. But yeah, not having the voices in it. And the designs are just okay. I really felt like in the same way, obviously, with the Mutant Agenda, where they combine the X-Men and Spider-Man the way that you want to see them with the voices you want. I do think, at the very least, Fantastic Four deserve that.
The Fantastic Four went through another 30 years of crummy movies at Fox and a few other cartoons. The anime-style cartoon seems all right. I watched a couple episodes, only because Squirrel Girl had a cameo in it. I watched one episode of that.
Oh, from World's Greatest Heroes from 2006 to 2010, is it?
I believe, yes. Yeah.
It's all right. I think it's a French studio that does it.
It's like French anime, yes. Yeah.
Yeah. It came out around the time of the first movie, and it's fine. I mean, to go to video games for a sec, I looked at like 5 different KB stores. There was a 1997 PS1 Fantastic Four game, and it is not good, I could say now, but just to know that my team had a game, I had to find it.
It got me to play the movie video game, one that I believe Nick Weiger was a producer on. Doughboy's Nick Weiger was a producer on the aughts Fantastic
Now, see, if any of these guys were in Marvel vs. Capcom, I would have known about them.
Yeah.
See, they're left out
and
of
it's
it.
a bummer that they weren't. Super Skrull, who has all their powers, is in part 3, but it is a shame that these characters were never in it. But, you know, Galactus also, right? Marvel vs. Capcom 3 as the final boss.
Yeah. But the FF's left out of it. They were, or Ben Grimm was in Marvel Nemesis, which also wasn't a good video game.
You know,
and Human Torch, I think, too. And then Doom is in Marvel Superheroes, obviously, yeah.
And you know, I was being kind of a smartass earlier, but this is going to be the first Fantastic Four movie in 10 years? Was 2015 the last one? I wonder if kids are going to think, oh man, this Reed Richards guy, total ripoff of Monkey D. Luffy.
I think so.
Yeah, I have room for one stretchy guy in my heart.
Though, of course, he's played by everybody's, TikTok daddy in Pedro Pascal's. Maybe they'll be too turned on.
And no one saw the 2015. It really bombed. And Josh Trank did that thing that there's one thing you shouldn't do in Hollywood besides go from, All in the Family to G.I. Joe. It's that you definitely should not attack the movie that you directed the day it's coming out.
Yeah.
He wrote this whole tirade of this was, the movie that I set out to make is still a beautiful movie, but not what you're going to see. And it's like, dude, if it's one thing you learn working in show business, shut up and take the L. You will work again if you were just civil. The best example of this I've ever seen on a podcast, when John Mulaney was asked about his sitcom Mulaney on Marin, He said, "We did the best we could. I'm still proud of the work that we did and of everyone who worked on the show. And sometimes things don't work out." That's all you say.
Well, I would bet Josh Trank had drinky motion when he was making those posts.
I did work on a show where one of the guys working on it was a first AD or something on Fantastic Four. And I was like, "Can I buy you lunch?" And he told me everything. And I mean, these stories became public, but like the house that he was given while he was there was like completely destroyed and his dogs went insane. And it's a descent into madness. If only it was that interesting on film.
If they had kept in more Tim Heidecker, I think it'd be at least 10% better, that movie. But no, the FF had gone through so many problems. Now, thanks to corporate consolidation, Marvel owns them again. And so everything will be better now that one company owns everything.
But their public persona is, these are losers. This is a stale idea. Give it up. You shouldn't be a fan of this. You know, I've watched my guys get shellacked for years by comic book fans. That's what hurts the most. People who don't know the Fantastic Four are like, I'm not even going to go see those movies. But people who do are like, they shouldn't be on film. So I'm excited to see. I think it's going to do well. Even if it doesn't, I hope it's good. I am going to bring my 32-inch Galactus with me to the theater. I'm going to tell the person at AMC I have autism. I need this. My dad's dead, and his soul is in the body of this 32-inch Galactus.
I just want to see the popcorn bucket this movie generates.
Man, Galactus's head. That'd be a good one. That's
amazing. There, you did it. Yeah.
Now,
but it comes out 2 weeks after Superman. I don't know if they're going to do buckets for both.
It's a rough one. It's or a good time if you're a comic book fan. But the
two movies that look hopeful and are set in the daytime. Like,
yes. Well,
we also need it in 2025.
I do like that the Thing is being played by, I feel like this is the first Jewish actor to play the Thing, and an actual blue-eyed Jewish man, Eben Moss-Bacharach.
I was booked on a show. Do you guys remember the nightly show on Comedy Central?
Yeah.
I do not. I'm going to say, what is it? Please.
It was on after The Daily Show, and it was a talk show. They had like a panelist. It was Larry Wilmore. And they would have like 3 or 4, guests and all of that. And I was booked. This was the summer of 2015 when that Fantastic Four was coming out. And I didn't realize that they booked me because they thought the episode was about diversity in superheroes. And they thought I was going to be the guy who was against it. And the other 3 guests, it was this rapper and comedian named Jean Grey. It was Phil Jimenez, who's a gay Latino artist and one of the best, artists of all time. And then the editor who helped co-create Miss Marvel, Kamala Khan. And they're like, all right, so they're going to talk, and then you're going to tell them why they're wrong. And I was like, but I don't think it was the weirdest. And I remember, because they're like, doesn't Michael B. Jordan as the Human Torch, doesn't that anger you? And I'm like, there's like 90 problems with that movie, and that's not one of them. And I was like, I'm the guy who's upset that we haven't had a Jew play the Thing.
Exactly. Yes.
Or Magneto. Yeah.
Well, we will see someday. Oh, and to put a bow on the Fantastic Four, the 94 show, it is part of the Saban backlog. Saban buys it. Then Disney buys Saban, and then Marvel is bought by Disney as well. And so they're all owned in the same place, and now they all live on Disney Plus together. Does this mean that someday the Fantastic Four, who did have a couple little teases in the X-Men 97 show, could they someday even be included in the X-Men 97 universe? Only time will tell. But all right, why don't we take a quick break? Going into the break, you're going to hear the terrible Season 1 theme song. And when we come back, you'll hear the slightly better Season 2 theme song when we talk about When Calls Galactus.
No need to fear, they're here. Just follow
Fantastic Four will continue after this.
Hey, true believers, I'm Stan Lee, and I want to tell you about the most fantastic sweepstakes ever. How would you like to work with me for a day as editor-in-chief of Marvel Comics? Just enter the Kmart and Marvel Comics Watch and Win sweepstakes this May and June. Get your Watch and Win scratch-off game card at participating Kmart restaurants and win one of 18 million discounts on Kmart food and drinks, plus 2,500 other prizes. Just watch the Marvel Action Hour and answer my questions. Details at participating Kmart restaurants.
Hey, it's Henry Gilbert welcoming you to Aunt Petunia's favorite podcast.
Hey, everybody, it's a cigar-chomping abomination, Bob Mackey. Hello.
And a big thank you to Mike Lawrence this week for picking the Fantastic Four animated series to talk about as we got very nerdy, and his expertise was great. Mike Lawrence is, what a cool guy coming on to help us with all this Fantastic Four discussion on this one.
Yes, I assume this would be 3 hours long, and I was correct.
And, we can only do cool podcasts like this where Mike Lawrence graces us with even more comic knowledge on the podcast, thanks to supporters at patreon.com/Talking Simpsons who get so many extras for their support.
That's right. If you want to support the show and get a ton of bonuses, including extra episodes and ad-free episodes, go to patreon.com/Talking Simpsons and sign up for just $5 a month. And when you do, you'll get access to every episode 1 week at a time and ad-free. That's right. If you don't like ads, that's where you want to be. But also, more importantly, you will gain access to 8 entire years of Patreon back catalog podcasts. They're all full length. They're all great. And we've covered things like King of the Hill, Futurama, The Critic, Batman the Animated Series, and Mission Hill. There's over 200 of those to date. And also, at that level, you will get one new episode of both Talking of the Hill and Talking Futurama every month. And again, that is all happening just for $5 a month, only at patreon.com/Talking Simpsons. There's also a $10 level if you want to step it up even further. With that $10 level, you also get all the $5 stuff, of course. But then on top of that, there is one mega long podcast once a month, only for patrons of that level or higher. And what is that, Henry?
Bob's talking about our What a Cartoon Movie podcast, which if you're a subscriber to this free feed, you get to hear the preview each month. You just heard our preview of an extremely goofy movie, and that's just the start of our summer of 2000s Disney, because coming up later this month, we are doing Lilo and Stitch, the 2002 original, and a truly beloved classic that I'm a big fan of, and I can't wait to talk about, that has a very interesting backstory to it. And we have covered so many awesome films on What a Cartoon Movie in over 7 years. You can hear us talk about every Disney Renaissance film before this, a ton of classic Disney films, and also if you love all this superhero talk, you gotta hear our ad-free and super duper long discussions of Batman, Mask of the Phantasm, Batman and Superman, World's Finest, Batman Beyond, Return of the Joker, and Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, for a ton of other comic booky content too. And of course, when you sign up at patreon.com/Talking Simpsons and see all the What a Cartoon movies, those are all ad-free, just like all of the great stuff you get at the $5 level. You get hundreds of hours of exclusive content for your money at patreon.com/Talking Simpsons.
And if you've never signed up for a Patreon before, it's very easy to do. And once you sign up, you can access all of our bonus podcasts the same way you access all of your regular podcasts as part of your podcasting lifestyle. And there is an app for any smart device you might have, and you can access all of our podcasts that way as well. No matter which way you do it, it's very easy to access everything waiting for you at patreon.com/Talking Simpsons.
So watch out for cosmic rays, grab your unstable molecules, and give a listen to the rest of our chat about Fantastic Four in the episode When Calls Galactus.
The adventures of the Fantastic Four continue.
And that was the slightly better Fantastic Four Season 2 opening theme song taking us in. Can't compare to, we talk about Haim Saban and Shuki Levy, being guys who stole music and called it their own and made it openings, but darn it, they had good taste, because you see the difference between like the X-Men theme and this one. This is like average at best a theme. This is no.
Yeah, and look, Chaim Saban and Shuki Levy took things that weren't originally theirs and made it theirs. And, that's just the Israeli way. So cut them some slack.
Tradition.
Tradition? If I own the X-Men.
Yes, there's a lot of Israeli businessmen in charge of most of these X-Men
Avi
Marvel
Arad,
cartoons.
yeah.
Avi Arad, Ike Perlmutter, Chaim Saban, Shuki Levy. Yes, yeah, it was.
Yes.
These are facts, and that's all. Anyways, but this episode, yes, John Byrne's great issues 242 to 244, which were collected in an early comic I read, and I love John Byrne. Made the Jack Kirby mythos exciting. Like he also did he bring in weird stuff like making it that Ben's Aunt Petunia was actually younger than Ben Grimm and that she had started dating her college professor when she was like 18. Yes, he did that, and that's not good. But you take the good with the bad. Did he write it that Sue Storm fell in love with Reed Richards when she was like 11 or 12? Yes, he did. There's bad in there too, I have to admit.
What I love about the beginning of this episode is, and it was a thing that John Byrne definitely did, and I think Kirby later did, which was your first page is a splash page. That,
yes!
When you're seeing the crackling of the universe and then Terrax coming through, that's clearly like a Larry Houston, I want to do a splash page to grab your attention. And it's kind of amazing. It's like before the credits, we don't see the Fantastic Four. We just see the villain coming towards us.
It's a fantastic cold open. I love the cold open. You're right. It's just like those splash pages of like, except it doesn't have voiceover narration that would be, in the cold darkness of space, a terror flies silently. In what direction is he going?
I'm sure we've all had breakups, but how tough do you think it was to tell Stan Lee that he wasn't coming back for season 2? We just want to go in a different, as good as the first season direction. I can talk about Terrax and Nova and please, I need the fucking money.
This episode is written by Jan Stranad, a veteran of the formative magazine Heavy Metal.
It must suck when your name looks like a typo
Yes!
from the get-go. I thought, they spelled the name wrong. How rude of them. It's like, nope, that's the person's name.
I don't know if I've seen 4 consonants in a row before you get to a vowel.
He worked on a lot of Star Wars books for Dark Horse in the 90s too, but was doing a lot of kids shows at the time. He wrote on X-Men and Spidey, and also did a ton of Disney TV animation, Tailspin, Goof Troop, Darkwing Duck. He wrote the Twin Beaks episode of Darkwing Duck that our friends on Gayest Episode Ever love so much.
Admirable.
I also love Bob that we must have been bullied so much that we went to the more creative idea of his last name and not the fact that he was beaten up for being a man named Jan.
Oh, hey, yeah. Now that you mention it, also hard to overcome.
Yeah.
Well, hey, we go from a weird name to a cool name. Richard Trueblood is the director of the episode. The late Richard Trueblood, another TV animation vet, did a ton of timing and animation director jobs too. Of previous What a Cartoon subjects he worked on, he was, I think, supervising director of the entire Saturday morning Sonic the Hedgehog show. He worked on a few Gargoyles, and yes, he worked in the first 18 episodes of the failed version of Bonkers before it got rebooted halfway through in Bonkers.
And was not hired for the show True Blood. And he's like, please, it's in my name. But you only have years of animation experience. We don't think you could do this live action vampire romance. But my name is True Blood.
At least one background artist appearance.
Yeah.
I love bisexual vampires. Come on.
Yeah. Let me do Twilight for people 2 years older.
I'm seeing here, director of Extreme Dinosaurs, a TV series. One of the best named TV series ever.
I think that's from the same people as Street Sharks. I think that came up in my Street Sharks research was Extreme Dinosaurs.
I knew that was a true-blooded show.
It's got a stamp on it.
Yeah.
So we see Terrax flying through the sky. Again, I love Terrax because he was in one of the first comics I read, The New Warriors. He's like in New Warriors #1 and fighting
Now,
them.
this will make both of your blood turn cold, but when this opening happened, I was like, and so Galactus flies through the sky. I know what comic books are. And then when it's like, well, that's his buddy Terex, I had to go back to my notes and say, all right, the Herald is flying through the sky. Got it.
And his whole planet has this weird Hulk Hogan-esque. The whole head is bald except there's hair around the sides. Very weird.
I won't judge their culture, Mike. If that's what their culture is, then I won't judge it.
I don't know what you call that hairstyle besides denial.
Well, actually, Terax, you know what? He might have enforced it on everybody because we learn later Terax is like a monstrous fascist dictator. So he could just be forcing everyone to have his hairstyle, man and woman, on his planet.
He was Tyros the Terrible, and then he becomes Terax the Tamer.
Man, I forgot the Tamer was the second part of his name.
Which just makes it sound like, that he's just tamer than the other heralds when the whole point was to... I love Galactus is like, I just need an asshole. I just need a Niedermeyer to get stuff done.
In case we lost people, I think he looks like Jet Black from Cowboy Bebop.
Hey, I see that.
How about that? Are you a different kind of old person?
So we cut to the Fantastic Four out on the town. They're having dinner together, signing autographs, and we're getting more continuity in season 2 as well because one of the earliest stories in season 2 is Johnny Storm falls in love with Crystal, who in the comics was his wife.
No, he wasn't. No, she leaves him for Quicksilver.
Right. She marries Quicksilver, and then he marries Alicia Masters, but Alicia Masters was actually Lila the Skrull the entire time. Yes.
Well, that's years later, but yeah, it's so funny, like seeing Bob and the quicksand our words create. She left Johnny for Quicksilver. She's just like, he can do things with his fingers. You can't. I'm sorry.
That's super speed, better in the bedroom.
Yeah.
Though I would think, Pietro is going to be a selfish lover. I think, though, he seems like a real jerk.
He seems like he needs to come on your face. To have conquest because his hair is white. He wants to
make your hair like his.
Yeah.
So Johnny's sad about Crystal, but then he meets a crazy woman, an insane woman who walks up. This is how she's written in the comics too. Like Frankie is like a crazy fangirl who Johnny and her story is told over more like dozens of issues in Burns run more like 10 something, but it's definitely not one issue.
I believe that she's introduced in issue 238. So it's not that many. But what is fascinating about this episode, like if we could just say criticism up top, they pack a lot in here. This easily could have been a 2-parter, but ever since the dawn of time, they tried to make the Inhumans work. Like the clip show in this season bothers me less than 3 episodes dedicated to the Inhumans. They've never worked and they will never work.
3 episodes of the Inhumans is too much. 2 at best, even though, again, I just said how much I love Jack Kirby. Jack Kirby, his best creation of this type is, to me, the New Gods, because Darkseid is the greatest. Second to that is a lot of the Asgard stuff in Thor, in his Thor run. Below that is the Inhumans, which is kind of lame, to be honest. And then way below that is the Eternals. And they're the ones who got a movie.
I know.
Well, I'll give it up to this for making this character be basically naked for about 8 minutes. Although, do some of my prep in public. I go to local cafes just to get out of the apartment and stuff. And sometimes I'm embarrassed by what I watch. At this point, early on, I thought, I'm going to hear a "sir," and then the laptop will have to close and I can never go back because it did look like I was watching some kind of fan porn.
When you first see her, she's got some cleavage. I like this opening of the FF, knowing that you are a bit more uninitiated, Bob. Like, one of the things that really did make them stick out, especially back in the 60s, is they are celebrities. They don't have secret identities. Everybody knows who they are, and if they were somewhere, they would get a ton of autographs and all of that. It's just, her leap from first meeting Johnny to then getting literal hot flashes and flying into space like a minute later, it's a lot. Then the air around her makes her, I love that she loses her flame, but just it's still around the appropriately needed areas to be covered.
I had forgotten the twist that when she lights on fire after, as at the end of the cold open, after basically she asks for an autograph, Johnny signs it, then notices she's a hot tamale, as Ben Grimm puts it. And then he accidentally activates her latent powers. when she gets like a flame bikini on, at first I was like, that accentuates her bathing suit areas in ways that seem sexualized. But then when I remembered or saw, no, she's nude, then that seems like a standards and practice. Well, actually, they're not with the network, but it does seem like a censored type note of, if she's going to be revealed to be nude, then we can't be looking at her naked breasts and butt. Give her a flame bikini.
Well, notably, she's a redhead and a fire crotch.
Whoa.
Wow, well done, sir. What I find, like, to me, the MVP in this whole opening scene with the Fantastic Four is Sue is awesome. Sue, when Ben is just hitting on, it just awoogaing, doing some real clamping around Frankie, and she goes, "How's your girlfriend, Alicia?" Oh, it's the best. Like, man, she just pours some cold water on that rocky dick.
I'm new to the thing, but I did enjoy all of his antiquated references, which were old-timey even 30 years ago. Like the Blue Plate Special, that kind of stuff. I wanted to hear him say, like, "I'd get a spot on her dance card any day."
It's weird because, like, there's been like a few episodes of this show where he turns back into Ben Grimm, and the voice is exactly the same. There's like, I'd feel like if you had lungs made of rock, you'd sound a little different from human to, actual Gollum.
You sound just like Michael Chiklis. The
commish. Yeah. Chiklis did fine, but he is, again, a Greek Bostoner, which is different from a New York Jewish man. Like,
and when I read these comics, my name was Michael, and I was definitely Chiklis.
So the character of Frankie is voiced by Lisa Miller McGee. Hasn't done a lot, but I have a feeling she was used because she was a regular on Biker Mice from Mars as Charlie Davidson, who, based on looking at her wiki page, she was the April O'Neil of the show. Tadaranovich was also the series voice director, too, for season 2. So I have a feeling he's like, hey, I know just the lady to get for this. She's great as Charlie Davidson, their way of getting around a Harley Davidson lawsuit, I would guess. So we go to the opening theme, which I do credit Houston and his team for getting in visual references to the cover of Fantastic Four #1, as well as, I believe it's annual #2 of Fantastic Four, of a giant Doctor Doom with the FF in his hands.
It's awesome. Yeah, I mean, this intro it makes them feel special. It's really well done. I like this a lot.
We also see that they're now in the Four Freedoms Plaza, which I think is the coolest. That again, was the one I grew up with as a kid, is the Four Freedom Plazas with the 4 on all sides of it. Though I wonder what they'll do in the MCU, because they really don't like secret bases in the MCU. Like, they had Avengers Tower for the end of the first Avengers movie, and then for an hour of Age of Ultron. And then after that, they just live on a bunker, a very boring bunker for a while.
Yeah, it comes back in Thunderbolts, if you've seen that or not. But yeah.
Yeah, that was good. That was
all right.
Yeah, hey, the bar was so low.
Yes.
3-star Thunderbolts, which has nothing to do with the Kurt Busiek and Mark Bagley Thunderbolts I grew up with. Anyway, though then again, if they had done it like that, the lead of the show would be a Nazi, and I think they don't want that. Though Baron Zemo's not a Nazi in the MCU, but
yeah, we only want the lead of our country to be one, not the lead of a show.
So Frankie light on fire, she's fine. We then fly into outer space, and this is something that's even in the friggin' movie trailer that we just saw. It's in most of the movies, that the Human Torch loses his flames when he flies up high in the atmosphere. Like, that's in the trailer for the new one. So I was like, wow, they're doing that again in this trailer.
Well, to be fair, he was a child when he was taken to space, and would, of all the 4 of them, know the least about how science works. It is fair for the character. I mean, the Fantastic Four themselves are an insane idea of a smart, qualified guy going into space, and then his friend who is a pilot. Okay, that's fair. And then, my girlfriend and her brother would also like to... Yeah. It's not that far of a leap from Katy Perry, is all I'm saying.
And you know what? They stuck with the realism from the comics. And by realism, I, of course, I'm talking comic realism, that fire burns off their clothes. Also, their clothes couldn't stretch or turn invisible with them either until Reed Richards invented unstable molecules, which is classic comic book excuse like, oh, well, these are made of unstable molecules, so it burns with his clothes, or it turns invisible with your clothes, or all those things.
Which was also the excuse Stan Lee gave whenever he didn't give Kirby credit for something. I'm sorry, my molecules were unstable that day.
But they get away with having a nude woman on this kid's cartoon.
Yeah, now she's only
really,
partially on fire, which it kind of accentuates the nudity, I think.
We head back to the Fantastic Four's base to find out what's going on.
Oh my gosh, she's burning!
No, she's all right, Sue, you see. Frankie wasn't hurt, and her young mind simply blotted out the traumatic incident.
Cosmic. So somehow my body absorbed that stuff in the beaker.
And contact with Johnny provided the catalyst necessary to activate the dormant molecular instability of the...
Come on, Professor, you're giving me a brain ache.
You know, it's funny, but ever since I was little, I just knew I was destined for something special. Come on, Johnny. Let's light up the skies. Teach me some of those killer moves of yours.
Oh, my pleasure.
You know, I'm glad Matchhead's finally checked out of Heartbreak Hotel.
Well, who knows? We may soon be changing our name to the Fantastic Five.
I don't know, Reed. I just hope Johnny isn't just rebounding from one heartache to another.
Sue is the only one who realized, like, you know, I think him just hooking up with a woman he just met and signed an autograph for maybe isn't good. I thought it was crazy that Reed Richards discovers, she's like, you have a buried childhood trauma here. Let's all watch it together right now. Like a risky move.
It's like, a hidden memory about your stepfather. Gather round, everybody.
And a very deep cut, like that they, you know, that this is tied to the original 1939 Human Torch, who's on the cover of the first Marvel comic ever, and they just leave that in there. Man, God bless Larry Houston, is all I'm saying.
I know. This is the difference between adaptations. A lot of them would have just been like, look, they can just say her like dad had an experiment or whatever, or anything. But they're like, no, this is tied to them trying to build the android Human Torch from the 40s. Like this, which is in the comic, I think, too, right? But it's a needless detail that only makes a thing more confusing.
Yeah, but boy, do I appreciate it. I'm a fan. Service me.
I also do love classic. I mean, like, come on, Professor, you're giving me a brain ache.
Yeah. From watching this, I noticed that Reed is the narrator, and the Thing is the guy who goes, in English, please.
Matchhead is on to rebound.
They'll go back and forth between Sue being a scientist as well and knowing the stuff, but then, because her origins were, well, he's talking about science stuff. I better go make some cookies because the 60s. But she's like a medium here of like not too ditzy, but not too smart.
There's you can cherry pick a million panels from the classic era of Sue just going like, please help me. I can't do anything. And like, they basically had a fan mail backup story of
I know you're talking
Stan
about
Lee and Jack Kirby. And
this is issue 11. Yeah.
And somebody wrote in, I don't like Sue. She's boring. Stop having her in it. And they're like, and the way they defend her inclusion in the comic is Abraham Lincoln's mother. They're like, Abraham Lincoln's mother maybe didn't seem that important either, but you'd have no Abraham Lincoln without it. And that's how you defend Sue Storm being in this comic book.
Well, and at this time, she could only turn invisible, the force fields and stuff. We see how, there's no other word for it, OP she is in this episode. It's a big leap forward. Look, comics should have been more inclusive, and the people behind the books should have been more diverse, and they weren't, and so we get some of this.
They go flying in the sky together, and you can see that Frankie is just like, I want to have fun. I always was supposed to be a superhero. Like, she clearly is into being a superhero for the wrong reason. She's not as selfless. And she almost gets them in trouble because she starts to sing a classic Sam Cooke song that would have cost them a lot of money. But fortunately, they're interrupted 5 lines into it, just like that crusty joke of like, stop or I'll have to pay for it.
Are the characters are the names based on the song? Was it a reference, Frankie and Johnny?
I could imagine they named Frankie, knowing that Frankie was going to end up with Johnny, that they liked them as Frankie and Johnny. Like, she could have been named that with that in mind, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure.
Yeah, it seems like a John Byrne thing to do. It wouldn't surprise me.
So it does predate all of these. It's from the early 20th century, I believe.
I just love that she goes, it's just like that famous song, and then she just sings the first 3 words, and that's it.
Well, because straight off of the comic book page, Terrax is here to steal Manhattan. Terrax is going to let them know what's up.
Bow before me. Humble your pitiful selves before the might of Terrax.
Oh, sure, pal. Right after I'm through curtsying to Captain Kangaroo.
Careful, Ben. Terrax is Galactus's new herald, the one who replaced the Silver Surfer. Thor and I encountered him once before.
Oh, yeah? Well, if he's thinking about setting up my world as a smorgasbord for Mr. Purple Planet Eater...
Terrax commands all soil and rock.
You know, what I love about Mr. Fantastic is when he needs to also talk to us to explain something, he really can just dumb it down. He doesn't use the big words when exposition is towards the audience.
I mean, he's based on like the absent-minded professor character, like, you know, the inventor of flubber, the guy who was also in Double Indemnity, that actor.
Oh, Fred McMurray.
There's a bit of Fred McMurray in him, which is him like just going like, well, thing, you see. Like, and which Stephen Colbert brought perfectly to the parody version of him in Venture Brothers being a very dismissive, condescending asshole.
Yeah.
He's also name-dropping Thor. We get it, okay? You're friends.
And also Thing ends up looking like a real dingus in this episode. He gets his butt kicked by every character in this one, or mainly just Terrax, but he keeps going like, even later when he's going to say his battle cry of clobberin time, he still gets beat up then too. He doesn't get one cool moment.
But that's what makes him great. He loses all the time, but he never gives up.
That is the Yancey Street way.
Like the Jewish people.
I was bringing it to Yancey Street. You're bringing it to Jewish people. It works both ways.
Yeah. We talk about where we come from.
Yeah, Bob, Ben Grimm grew up on Yancey Street in the Bronx, but now the Yancey Streeters think he's too fancy and kind of prank him.
This is a real street.
No, it's based on Delancey Street because Jack Kirby grew up in the Lower East Side.
Got it.
That's right, yes.
But they didn't want to get sued by a street, so they changed it from Delancey to Yancey.
And the funny thing is Jack Kirby, like, he do a lot of the same ideas like 3 or 4 times. So another version of the Yancey Street gang is the newspaper kids or the newspaper gang in DC Comics as well.
Is it the Newspaper Legion? Or
the Newsboy Legion. The Legion of Newsboys. That's it. Yes. Thank you. Again, I fail.
Is Yellow Kid part of that, or is this a different universe entirely?
When Henry's references run out of oxygen, I am there. In a flame bikini.
He's putting the force field over the podcast.
Yes. Yes.
So yes, Terrax steals all of Manhattan, and Invisible Woman, like you said, Mike, she used to be, it's almost like how Stanley and Jack Kirby came up with a guy called Molecule Man. They're like, he controls molecules. And then by the 80s, they realized that's God. Like, you're a god if you can do that. Like, same deal with, she can make an invisible force field and just, like, move things. So she can, like, fly and explode people's hearts and just, like, rip people apart. Like,
she can create energy constructs. It's like the Green Lantern. She first gets the glimpses of those powers, I believe, in issue 22. Because the problem was, it's like, you can't do much with someone who just turns invisible, and she would often get, she was the damsel. She would get caught pretty easily because the amount of supervillains would be like, yeah, but I can still hear you. And they just capture her. So to the credit of these guys, they were taking criticism and they were filtering it into the books. If you read around the late teens or early 20s of the book, a George R.R. Martin, I believe he had 3 R's at the time, is in the letters pages talking about how lame some of their villains have been. And that's before Galactus, where it's like, so they were listening to that too.
Isn't that wonderful that George R.R. Martin is like a letter column kid in classic Silver Age comics? Like,
it's just nice he finished something he wrote.
They fly off into space, and the Invisible Woman stops everybody from like choking to death in outer space. And in the comic, Spider-Man, Iron Man, Captain America, Doctor Strange, and Daredevil also go along for the ride. They don't have that in the budget for the show at this time.
What happens in the comic, which is really fun to me, is Spider-Man and Daredevil just realize that they're going to sit it out and they're going to just stand on a rooftop and watch everyone else fight. Because they're like, this is too big for us. Because this is before company-wide crossovers and all of that. This is like right before that era of put Spider-Man on every cover. So the idea like that Spider-Man, who's like, great power, great responsibilities, like, yeah, but I can't fight that big purple guy. I'm going to just sit over here.
I'm good.
Yeah.
That was one of my favorite things in the in the original Infinity Gauntlet comic that they did put in the Infinity War movie, is all Spider-Man really can do with Thanos is web him in the face once and kind of annoy him. And you know what? They put it in the Infinity War movie. I had wanted to see that for 25 years of my life, and when they put in the movie, 5 stars. That was the one thing on my list. The Spider-Man web Thanos in the face?
And Caesar wept.
For there were no more comics left to reference.
So they are flown off by Terrax, and Terrax lets him know that the reason he's doing this is because Galactus is weak. He wants them to kill Galactus for him. And so Terrax is basically sent them off to, I like the Thing's reaction to it too, is like, and I wanted a weekend off. Like every line is the Thing written perfectly, but it's, you said, Mike, you can't write him wrong. And
you can imagine Jack Kirby saying that, like, hey, we have this Avengers annual we're going to do with 28 more pages. I wanted the weekend off. I'm missing my daughter's recital.
The Superman animated series did have a better tribute to Jack Kirby.
God, that makes me cry.
The Dan Turpin, yes. Apocalypse Now, Part 2, quite an episode.
The world didn't need a Superman. It just needed a brave one. I'm starting to cry. Okay.
Please
continue. Yeah. Fucking God.
Let's talk about one of Jack Kirby's gods that he created, Galactus, who basically, Galactus and Silver Surfer are a little like God and Jesus, perhaps. I feel like Stan Lee embraced that more than Kirby. I don't know. What do you think, Mike?
Yeah, like I said, just the idea that Jack Kirby created this guy in the background, the Silver Surfer, like it feels like his son wanted to go surfing and he said no, and because they were probably like he was going to do it in like the Hudson River or something. Like, no, we should do that. It was like, but surfing, yeah, it's fascinating. I mean, Galactus is a game changer, like as we talked about before with the cosmic stuff, but just like the design of him is insane. I love one of my favorite things in comic books, and both Stan Lee, I'm sorry, that's what he would want me to say. Both Steve Ditko and Jack Kirby did this a lot. They drew designs that only they would find fun to draw again. Because the Galactus design, the fact that it is even in animation this elaborately is insane. Like it is, but in the original comic, as I'm sure Henry knows, he originally was sleeveless, so you saw his arms, and he had a big G on his chest. His basic origin is he was the last surviving creature before the Big Bang, and then he is now the first creature after the Big Bang, and he goes around eating plants.
Bob, do you remember when we did the Futurama episode about the forwards-only time machine? I mentioned that, I knew of this science theory of the circular Big Bang universe because of the Galactus comic.
Well, I'm looking at this early design, and I think it was a smart idea to lose that letter because he should be above the Roman alphabet. Why would he reference this just tiny, puny civilization he doesn't care about?
Yeah, but then I love they created Apocalypse in the 80s for X-Men. They put a big old A on his tummy.
Yes.
And he's Egyptian.
And it's John Byrne in his run. I think he's the one who establishes that Galactus, as part of the power cosmic, is if you're on a Skrull planet and you look at him, he's a Skrull guy. If he looks like you see,
he's more of a concept. Yeah. So, you see him as really what you fear the most because he's coming to eat your planet. So he has no specific design because he is otherworldly. Yeah.
Well, and here as they arrive in Galactus' spaceship, this is where we hear in this version, we perceive Galactus as being voiced by the late, great Tony Jay.
Galactus.
I've been awaiting you.
then you know we've been sent by Terax.
Yeah. But any special reason Mr. Charm out there wants to put you out to pasture?
Behold, Benjamin Grimm, the manner in which cosmic events unfolded. When the Silver Surfer broke faith with Galactus to protect that pale blue orb which is your Earth. I searched the galaxy for a herald devoid of any and all morality. I chose Tyros, a bloodthirsty tyrant on his home world, a being without morals, without guilt. I imbued Tyros with the power cosmic, thus recreating him as my new herald, Terax. He laughed as I devoured his planet, his people, his family. Gladly did he go forth to find new life-sustaining worlds to feed my hunger. Yet Terax was not content with the role of servant.
I really love that in Terax's origin, that he, compared to the Silver Surfer who Norrin Radd sacrifices himself to save his planet, here when he makes Terax a herald, he's like, hey, eat everybody on my planet, kill all of them, I don't care.
I want to talk about Tony Jay briefly because, well, what a get for them. I mean, I know he's doing a lot of voice acting, but he elevates anything he does 1,000%. And I think one of my greatest disappointments was watch Twin Peaks for the first time like 3 or 4 years ago, get to season 2, mostly enjoying it. There is a rough patch. And during that rough patch, you see guest star Tony Jay in the credits. And you're like, whoa, Tony Jay is in Twin Peaks? I don't even think he gets a close-up. He's always in the background. I think he says like 8 things, and he's quickly not on the show anymore. So huge disappointment. David Lynch, one of his few massive mistakes as a filmmaker.
And you know what? Tony Jay could have been in The Return. Though actually, you know what? Maybe he is in The Return.
I think Tony Jay died in like 2004.
Oh, I thought he lived a little longer. Okay, my bad.
I'm just upset that in the end, when he gives Frankie Ray the powers of Nova, he doesn't just go, now you're covered in space fire, space fire. Yeah, he's a great voice actor. I think you guys have mentioned, some voice actors, they have one voice, and that's all you need. And I don't think he had any range at all. He didn't need it. And I am glad that in a big Disney movie in the 90s, he got a showcase role that will stand the test of time and certainly outlive all these TV performances. I believe he was also the villain on The Mighty Ducks around this time.
Shout Factory, their YouTube channel is great because everything that has no value has a 24-hour stream. So Reboot is one of those things with no value to anyone. No one wants to buy it.
Yeah.
So when I leave the house, I always leave on something for my bird so he can watch TV, and he does. He loves watching television. And I always turn on Reboot, and I'm just kind of like frozen in place whenever Megabyte is on the screen because I love hearing Tony Jay. We only got so much of it.
Yeah, well, don't worry because Tony J.I. is coming, and people will just use that voice over and over, and you'll be like, oh, no.
Can I just talk to Tony Jay like I can make Darth Vader say slurs to me?
Yeah, that's what's going to happen. He can do everything but give closure to his family.
They stopped the AI from doing that, saying, I've always loved you, son.
Another great one we covered with Tony Jay, and it was Mighty Max.
Virgil, right?
Max,
yeah, Virgil, yeah. Yeah.
I guess all of these were around 95. He just, I think just like Jonathan Rhys Davies, who we hear later in the episode, like these British actors moved to America in the 90s and they just took every job. They're like, well, I live in LA now, so I'll do 17 different voice acting gigs.
Well, they're like, yeah, we need a Tony J type, and he just is behind them and goes, I'm available. Ah!
Well, now I'm learning that Henry has not seen The Return, and he's been to David Lynch's grave.
I got to episode 8, and then we decided
his ghost was like, Henry, I'm very disappointed in you.
Yeah, well, my David Lynch memory was, we got to pick the video. Sometimes my brother would do it, sometimes I would, sometimes my dad would at the rental store. And the beating I got for Mulholland Drive, my dad just being like, I know you're just doing this to look smart. You don't even enjoy this movie.
Yeah.
Did you at least keep it on long enough to awkwardly watch the sex scene together?
Oh, we watched the whole thing.
Okay.
And he was miserable.
The bad thing is if you're not on board, that movie is 2.5 hours long. So it's quite a ride.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not a Mulholland walk, that's for sure.
Galactus shows everybody his wonderful flashback vision powers. He lasers it at them, which he has in the comics too. It's like the power cosmic can kind of do anything.
Yeah. It's what the plot requires.
Also, it's interesting that I think they had in their back pocket the idea for a Silver Surfer spin-off show, but it would take 2 more years and a Saban production for there to be a Silver Surfer TV show, which is much headier. I wouldn't even say I loved it. And of course, we know it because he also got to meet Hank Hill.
That's right.
Silver Surfer did. But of course, on that, Galactus is voiced by a Canadian, James Blendick, who's totally fine, but it's a cheaper Toronto guy. That's why.
Yep. Thank you, Saban.
We also get to see a lot of Kirby Crackle. That also feels like a Larry Houston move of like, get the little black dots in all the power. See, Bob, when energy has black dots around it to indicate the waves of power, Kirby, I think, invented that or popularized it at least, and fans call it Kirby Crackle.
I wrote down Kirby Crackle in my notes just a few times. I'm up on the lingo.
Oh, it's that mainstream.
On this far out lingo.
Okay. Yeah. So Terrax realizes his plan's not working. They're not killing him. And so he's going to go in to finish the job. You know, Terrax is slashing away with his power cosmic. And Frankie is immediately trying to protect Galactus, which to me reads like she is a fangirl who found like a bigger star she wants to attach herself to.
It totally is. Because like her first character introduction was just pushing other people out of a line to get to a dude. And then, she found a better dude.
And now we finally, as the fight gets going, this is where, now in the comic, Galactus immediately goes like, oh, Terrax, you tried to kill me. I can take away the power cosmic, zoop, and just steals it back at the end. Here, they need to create an excuse to have like a couple minutes of fighting on screen for Galactus to take back the power cosmic.
Yeah. I'm going to make a modern sports reference. You know, Frankie Ray is the girl that's dating Bill Belichick now. And Johnny Storm was the girlfriend he had before. And Galactus is Bill Belichick.
But do not ask him how they met.
Yes. But do ask him what they have in common. We get each other on a deeper level.
It does have, when Galactus brings her to dinners with the Living Tribunal in Eternity, they're just like, oh man, this is
she has an old soul.
And this, though, as the fight begins, I had to clip this out. The Thing, I was so glad the Thing said his catchphrase in this episode.
His equipment's absorbing Terrax's energy. Every time Terrax uses his power, he makes Galactus stronger.
So that's why the Winghats kept us alive up here, to sucker Terrax into a fight.
Well, which means...
I know what it means, Professor. It's clobberin time.
Just like it says on my shirt. There it is.
Yeah. I love the idea of him being like, well, wait, it's half past clobberin time. We got to wait for the next one.
So has the Thing ever fought CM Punk for his blatant theft?
You know, it's why he can't say it in video games. He just mouths the word in video games. Yeah.
But boy, did it make me, like, he was already my favorite wrestler. And I'm like, I'm going to love you forever, despite who you fight backstage.
Let's please. This will turn into a 3-hour
I
podcast
know.
if you open that can of worms. Of CM
We're
Punk
getting
fight.
close anyway, but yeah.
Okay.
Let's keep going.
No, yeah. I love it's clobbering time. It feels like the MCU thing. When they finally did Avengers Assemble, they whispered it. And I wonder, are they going to overthink it and not do a straight ahead? It's clobbering time. Punch. Are they going to be eating over dinner and the thing says like, it's clobbering time? I hope they don't understate it. That's what I fear.
Or, like, was it Age of Ultron? He just says, I think I know what time it is, and end credits.
I bet there's going to be a bunch of teases, and he won't say it until the next movie. Like, he's going to get his shoes fixed, and it's cobbling time, and everyone's like, oh, fuck. He was so close.
It's daylight savings clobbering time.
They have dinner together. It's cobblering time, and he makes cobbler with Herbie.
And we're just screaming in the theater, just give me the thing I want.
I blame Joss Whedon, man. He fucked around with that Age of Ultron thing and ended it with Avengers clip, and it's like, you motherfucker. Like, how... sometimes don't zag when you should have zigged. Just zig. You can
and
just
that's
zig.
the worst thing he ever did. All right.
Terrax is taking his powers back. Insolent worm, have you not yet learned who is master and who is slave? The power cosmic is mind bestow and mind reclaim. Also, basically dialogue from the comic.
Yeah, it's a pretty solid adaptation. And then he fatalities him. Like
he turns him
he
into
turns
worms.
him into like weird space wormy stuff. And
I was
it's
confused
awesome.
by. I was like, "Is this an animation error? Why did he become a mound of worms?" And then they later referenced the worm, so I was like, "Oh, I guess that he was supposed to be worms." So Galactus can turn you into worms.
Apparently,
he can do what he wants. Power
Yeah.
cosmic, baby. In the comic, he gets taken by Doctor Doom in Latveria, and then gets reprogrammed and with all that. But
By turning into worms, we get to hear the thing say, "What a revolting development." Like, that is like, it's a stolen catchphrase, but I still love hearing him say it.
It works.
Seemingly, everything's fine and the episode should be over, but they need a third act. And so Galactus still hungers. And I like when he announces he's hungry, he basically walks towards the camera and like eats it. He's like eating you. Like, that's how hungry Galactus is. So we come back in Act 3. This is where we learn about, well, first Sue finally gets to put down her defenses. And
which she could have 15 minutes ago. They just forgot to tell her.
Oh, Sue, sorry.
Me and Galactus were talking, he told me what it was like to be a cosmic entity. And then for 3 hours, I told him what it was like to be me.
I watched this entire thing, and then afterwards I remembered, like, oh, right, she's the Invisible Woman. And I forgot that was her alias, because in this episode, she is Force Field Girl.
She really should just change the name to Forceful Woman, perhaps that.
I mean, what she really should do is leave the team and find her own identity and life. But at the very least, Force Field Woman. Which is very clear. The fact that, like, it's so amazing to me. All the women in Marvel in the 60s, their power was basically repelling you. Like, the Wasp had a sting, so did Black Widow. Scarlet Witch had hex bolts. Jean Grey could push you away with your mind, and then Sue has literal force fields. Like, these are clearly just guys mad at their wives when they wanted some time to themselves.
The subtext is really just like all women push me away, tippity type.
I mean, it wasn't until like around She-Hulk where it was like, oh, they can touch things and fight and punch too.
You know what? Yeah, like Crystal moves things. Like Medusa picks up people with her hair and pushes them away from her.
But not her hands.
Polaris is just female Magneto. Man, you're right. Jeez. It's time for the superhero guest stars to appear, as Act 3 is full of them. Let's hear. And again, I was so happy. Not only did I get an It's Clobbering Time in this episode to clip out, but we also get to hear about the Thing's relatives.
And Petunia's favorite nephew ain't just gonna sit around on his dainty orange patootie while old Square Eyes turns planet Earth into a blue plate special. Hey, Stinks and Ingrate, we saved you!
Galactus, I beg you, stop in the name of humanity.
What knows Galactus of humanity? I do what I must.
And so do I, you helmet-headed heel.
Galactus is just doing what he must to survive.
Reed, look, it's Thor!
Stay thy hand, villain. I command thee, Hulk.
Goldilocks is hogging all the fun.
Put him on! Come on, Frankie, let's get him!
No.
Again, this might confuse people who are used to, the Thor we've had in the movies for a while. But this is how Thor was back then. He talked in verilese and forth sooth. Even though he's a Norseman, why would a Norse god talk like a Shakespearean character?
I didn't know what was around the corner, but when this happened, I wrote down in my notes, by God, is that Thor's music? This is all I know about wrestling. People appear...
My own beard! That must be Thor! He's got a whole Asgardian family! Yeah. He appeared in episode a few before this with Ego the Living Planet, and they basically have Galactus starting to eat Ego, and Thor's in that one. I mean, so that's how they know him. But yeah, John Rhys Davies in this is awesome. It's perfect, especially 90s casting. What is amazing, like Henry, you said a lot of guest stars. It's just 2, but I think they're used so well that it doesn't matter. There are a few more in the comic, but I think the 2 they pick here are kind of perfect. Where, if you want one hero to make a story feel bigger and more grandiose, you get Thor. And also, Galactus was in a lot of Thor comics in the 60s, too, because I think Kirby did love drawing Thor the most out of all of his books. And I think Galactus is one of his favorite characters to draw. He's like, I'm going to have like one day I actually like my job.
I also love hearing him called helmet-headed heel and old square eyes. Like, that's Stanley
Awesome.
dialogue.
Sorry, Ron Freeman. These guys know to get out of their own way. And as a writer, ego isn't just a living planet. And you want to put as much of your own stuff and your own spin. But you're adapting pretty perfect as they are comics. Just put the stuff in.
Davies, at the time, he was probably doing these parts in between filming Sliders episodes.
And if not, that's what he was eating at White Castle. I verily like these onions.
I just watched a viral video of him at an intentional, like, it's marketing. The Disney parks hired him to go with hardcore park fans and ride the Indiana Jones ride with them at Disneyland. And so you get to watch a very old man ride the Indiana Jones ride like 10 times in a row with a bunch of fanboys. That seems like that would be hell for him, but
there's worse ways to die, but
And Thing is complaining about it. Goldilocks is hogging all the fun. They can't do nothing. Even weakened, Galactus is infinitely more than a match for us. Just like in the comics, he's kicking their butts even. It takes all of, like, John Byrne is obsessed with power scale and in a way I really appreciate. He's like, this guy's stronger than this guy and this guy's this. And so he says, if Galactus is starving to near death, and if all of the biggest, most powerful superheroes all punched him at once, they might knock him out. That's how weak Galactus has to be to lose a fight. But in that comic, they did not have the power of Richard Grieco.
The power of guilt.
Well, they do. It's Doctor Strange, but he's not as sexy as Richard Grieco. I mean, this is the moment of the show if you are 11 years old and wanting to be cool. This is Danny Ketch, 1990s Ghost Rider. And, I mean, what an entrance. What a move and what a goodbye. Like, you can't do better with 90 seconds of screen time than this dude.
I like the voice acting in this show in general, but I feel like Richard Grieco is going for something, but he just sounds kind of bored instead of sinister and ominous. And I was wondering, I can conjure an image of Richard Grieco in my head if you say his name, but I don't know where I know him from. I'm looking at his credits and I'm like, oh, I guess he was the guy from 21 Jump Street who wasn't Johnny Depp. And that's about as far as he goes with me.
Well, if you ever watched anything on USA, an episode of Renegade was just wrapping up. And so you may remember.
Oh, he was
him from
Renegade.
that. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Normally it was just like the Duckman Weird Science Power Hour for me before I tuned out on a Saturday night.
Yeah. But you were either getting the intro of Pacific Blue, and if you watch wrestling, you were always getting the intro to Silk Stockings. Yes. And wondering why you felt things you never felt. But
that's another Shout Factory 24/7 channel. If you want to catch up with Silk Stockings, go for it. Go nuts.
Oh, nice. See, I can't turn away from their Alf channel, so that's the only that Mystery Science Theater and Alf. Those are the two I've put on the most of it.
Have you heard of this very quick? The dad of Alf having a nervous breakdown on the set and him yelling. They all think he's the puppet, but we're the puppets.
He seemed to have a lot of personal problems, and then famous drug bust with a sex worker, and then kind of died a little too young. So I think he had a lot of demons. Max Wright, is that his name? The actor? Yeah.
Yeah, Max Wright. He ended up on Norm for a little bit, but you get cast. He was like a theater guy. You get cast in a sitcom, and you're like, man, I'm gonna make it. And they had like 14-hour shoot days because of the puppetry sometimes. And he literally broke down. The other famous story that he drove off set the second it was wrapped.
Yes. Bob, you had the great observation that actor is also in All That Jazz, and he's basically doing the same bit.
In Alf, he was like 33 years old.
Oh, my God.
Richard Grieco, also speaking of aging, if you see him in his cameo in the 21 Jump Street like movie, you will go like, oh, that's what he looks like now? Like, wow. Like, there's a lot of wow in seeing him. But
did you guys like this moment? I love this moment. Yeah, in the comic, it's Doctor Strange. He comes out of nowhere, kind of. And he casts a spell that makes him see the ghost of everyone that he's slain. And this is basically the same thing, but it's the penance stare. And the penance stare was a power, I believe, created in 1990. The first Ghost Rider did not have it, although Nicolas Cage can give you a pen and stare.
I didn't know what to expect because I was thinking, well, what is Ghost Rider going to do? I don't know anything about him, but just based on who he is, how can this be a fair matchup? But he surprised me. I like just seeing a skeleton on fire. It's great.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the power works. You feel the pain and suffering that you caused other people, which is awesome because I believe like Dr. Doom has survived it. I think the Punisher has survived it. There are certain characters who are so steadfast in their beliefs that the pen and stare does not affect them.
See,
because
okay.
they have no guilt.
This is my problem with the pen and stare, and it always has been, that it's the same problem as a Jedi mind trick, that in Star Wars, when they create the idea of a Jedi mind trick, from that point on, Obi-Wan Kenobi should have no more problems, or no Jedi should, because they should just be like, well, give me what I want. I need this. Then you have to create characters to go like, yeah, that Jedi mind trick don't work on me. This plot, and it becomes a plot point. So then you make it less good. So that then the pen and stare, if it worked on everybody, Ghost Rider would win every fight all of the time. So instead, he constantly has to face people. Like, he tried it on Thanos in a comic, and Thanos
He
thinks
could have
like,
used it on
fun.
Daredevil.
Did he use it on Daredevil? Well,
He can't use it on blind people. He's got to look at you.
The pen and stare, so that also, I definitely as a kid thought this too. Galactus wouldn't feel bad about who he killed. Like, he's a force of nature. He wouldn't give a crap. Also, the pen and stare counts on Christian belief too, which I feel like Galactus is far beyond that.
It is a move in Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3. I believe it's like his hyper move that you just... It's basically like the Raging Demon for Akuma. You look at someone, it's like, I don't know if it's one shot kill, but it takes at least like 60% of your life. It's awesome. And then he's in a Hulk episode. They really were trying to make a Ghost Rider series happen. This was his debut.
And still Richard Grieco, too. It would have been it's him in the Hulk episode, too, so he would have been the lead in it. I do think the thing that held him back from kid shows at the time is, like, if they are told by network that you cannot have, like, literal Satan or, like, Christian hell in it, how do you do a Ghost Rider story?
And it's like, there's nothing more brittle than, like, bones. Like, it feels like you could easily just crush his face.
Well, yeah, Bob, I did wonder what this scene was like to the non-insane, where Ghost Rider shows up, blasts Galactus, and then leaves like, I'm out of here.
It felt like a bit Deus Ex Machina thing, but I assume, well, the lore can back this up.
I do wish Doctor Strange was here instead. But here, why don't we give a little second to Ghost Rider's appearance here?
Hear me, Galactus.
Holy smoke!
Am I missing something? Is everybody around here on fire but me?
They call me Ghost Rider. I am summoned when innocent blood is shed, and you have shed much innocent blood.
Ghost Rider? I thought he was a myth.
Who called them anyway? And when did this become a superhero convention?
Do you dare face the agony of those you have slain?
Mortal or demon, whichever you be gone. Galactus has no time for games.
This is no game.
No!
Feel the torment of a billion extinguished souls. Experience the pain of eternal guilt.
And when Frankie hears about that he's killed like 1 trillion people, she's like, I got to get with this guy. Like, I got to get in space with this guy.
I also like that realistically, proportion-wise, he would just be staring at his, like, feet. Your feet will feel the guilt.
Well, they stepped on a lot of people, I'm sure.
Your bunions will feel the power of a burning sun.
I also love that Ben is there to be like, he's got so many great one-liners. Everybody on fire here but me. Is this a superhero convention? What's with everybody showing up here?
But
like,
even Johnny, like, it's a great intro. I thought he was just a myth. Like, that's all you need to know. They set it up perfectly. Like, you can say what you want about this cartoon. I don't think it could be better written than it is.
I love hearing the things that instead of saying that he got dosed or got drunk, he had too much of Aunt Petunia's pink lemonade. Another great line. Lots of people in the 80s thought what happened here was crazy in the comics, which is they say to Reed, Galactus is a living thing. Don't let him die. And Reed Richards won't let it happen. Like, Reed Richards will save anybody. And This led to that is the entire point of the trial of Galactus story, is that Reed is put on trial because by saving Galactus, he's responsible for everybody Galactus kills after that. And to make him no longer guilty of that, they have to establish that Galactus is a force of nature that must exist. And so Reed is blameless in it. It's like, well, you caused a hurricane. And they're like, well, it's just a hurricane. You can't blame that.
Yeah, I mean, if you tell survivors of a tragedy that their family had to die, they feel better.
It was written to happen. It's fate, guys. Don't get mad at the guy who saved Hitler for whatever. Mike, do you blame Reed, or do you believe what Eternity said in that trial?
Well, I think Reed realized that future writers of the Fantastic Four would not want to come up with new ideas and just want to homage classic stories. So he had to keep them. I get it from both points, but it makes sense for the character of Reed to believe in a natural order of things. I mean, I could tell in the movie, they say, we sent a signal into space and it hurt us. Them getting their powers is going to be connected to Galactus, I think, in the movie. And I think that's smart for, a movie. But even in the Marvel Universe, where things are so much wider and more expansive, it fits for Reed to care about Galactus.
And Reed is a staunchly anti-death penalty guy. They work together with Thor to resuscitate Galactus. And this is where they realize he needs to eat another planet. And by the way, when Reed also goes well, I found some lifeless planets, it's there's still bugs on it and stuff. Even if there's not sentient people. Also, just making a planet disappear seems kind of I don't know, bad, a morally bad thing. This is where they learn he still needs another herald, and he's got to volunteer.
Mighty Galactus, spare the Earth, and I will become your new herald.
Frankie, no!
Frankie, do you realize what you're saying?
I do.
But what about us?
Don't you see, Johnny? Your destiny is with Crystal. You must know that. Mine is with Galactus. Somehow, I've always known it deep in my soul.
Herald.
Stand back. We have absorbed energy anew.
Let the power cosmic join with your own. Behold Nova, herald to Galactus.
Frankie, wait!
Turn back, Johnny Storm. Where I go, you may not follow. I'm free! Free! I'm free!
That's kind of rude. You just left a guy that was into you, and you just yell how free you are. There's a few things about this scene that are amazing to me. One, I love that Galactus truly respects consent. I need a herald, but I only want someone who's willing to do it. That's awesome. This scene would be so much better if Ghost Rider rode back. It was I left my wallet, guys. So sorry.
You just keep doing your thing. I'm good.
Yeah. You didn't see anything.
Also, Frankie is reminding him dude, you should be with Crystal. I'm just your rebound chick. You've known me for 8 hours. Also.
Yeah, and it's you live in your sister's apartment. This guy has his own ship. It's a no-brainer, really.
I think too, Johnny should realize he dodged a bullet here of this crazy lady who just instantly decided she'll become a space angel for eternity. Maybe I'm better off without that lady. She's called Nova here, which is already a name of another hero, which caused problems later when they brought Nova back, and then he had to be Kid Nova, and that's sort of the Nova core in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. We still got yet to get real Nova in the Marvel movies. I love Richard Rider. Don't call him Dick Rider. Richard Rider.
Hey, we didn't call him Dick Greco, so Dick Rico.
So they fly off, but this is where Galactus has a sweet, friendly goodbye. Meanwhile, Johnny is sad.
Wait! Air's too thin. Goodbye, Frankie.
Reed Richards, you saved my life when it would have been far easier to do otherwise. For this act, Galactus willingly renews his pledge to spare your planet. Perhaps here, as nowhere else in the limitless cosmos, Galactus has found those he might dare name friends.
They let Galactus have the last word in that story. The FF could wrap this up, but he's like, nah, you're my friends. It's like, oh, thanks, killer of trillions. Like, I'm glad we're your friend.
The real treasure was the planets we ate along the way. The end.
If I had to pick one 90s sitcom that I could watch on repeat, I dare say it's Friends. It is a little bit eye-rolly. It works, like, because he's a lonely guy, and he just... I love, like, and in the comics too, he talks about how, like, the Silver Surfer was his first herald. Like, he's been around for 4 billion years. He decided to get help, like, 20 years ago. 2 of the guys had guilty consciences, and then one was just an outright asshole. And and he's like, but this young lady who has feelings for me, now I could do this.
Maybe Frankie also feels free because she's back to flying around naked as she did at the start. Yeah, that's why.
Yeah.
I also do wonder, again, how to the non in this, saying this works, because I know as a comic nerd that, like, Galactus's word is bond. Like, he never breaks his word. So in the Ego episode, Reed went back on the promise that he'd never eat Earth, and now Galactus renews it here, and that's, like, supposed to be a major moment, but I wonder how much it reads to a regular out there.
If you're thinking about it in terms of a good story, it kind of, Ego should be brought up in the sense that, like, if Galactus isn't around to do his job, there are living planets that will come to kill us.
And Ego won't be as friendly as Kurt Russell.
Bob, he's basically a planet with a face. Like, he has, like, he has facial hair for some reason.
Is this Kurt Russell you're talking about?
Yeah, but they didn't go the full way with it because, like I said, Kirby doesn't get respect. But yes, it is technically the same character, but, you didn't see him as a full planet enough.
Ego rules as a planet that is a face. I'm hopeful in that Green Lantern show that's coming up on HBO Max now. Now I have to retrain myself. It's no longer Max. It's HBO Max again. But when the Green Lantern show starts on there, if they don't have Mogo in there, the Green Lantern that is a planet, I'll be disappointed. They better at least do Mogo right.
And maybe Mogo doesn't socialize because he has planetary autism.
I love it. Another autism-coded character. We need more of those in television.
All planets are autistic.
They do have their own way of doing things. So yes, we go to the credits, and lame-o credit song, I gotta say. And this is the better one than the season 1 one. They both are lame credits. But yeah, as far as I guess my final thoughts to wrap up on it, I think, is that on the budget they have and having to basically restart the show from scratch in the second season, they took the John Byrne comics, some of my favorites, and did it pretty darn good on their budget. But of course, if you compare this to a 1995 episode of Batman the Animated Series or Superman the Animated Series or even a 95 Spider-Man, I do find it a little lacking. It's way better than the first season, that's for sure.
Yeah, I like it better than Spider-Man, and maybe even a little bit of X-Men, but it is how much I love these characters. It does feel like a glass of chocolate milk and your favorite cereal. There's just something comforting about this to me. And what I always love about the Fantastic Four, and what I love about this show, and even this episode, is sincerity. So much stuff is trying to be cool and trying to be hip, and it's embarrassing. This knows how antiquated it is with the petunias and the blue plate specials, and it gives it to you the exact way that you should have it. It's comfort food, and I'm very comforted by it.
Yeah, I guess there were better options at the time in terms of just like a quality show, but based on what I know about this, which is very little, it seems like they did the best job they could with the limited resources they had. So I was expecting it to be much worse, actually, and I'm sure it would have met my expectations if I watched season 1. But I hope you Marvel fans get a good Fantastic Four movie, because God knows you don't get enough in your life from that company. Speaking of comic adaptations, I've been waiting on that fucking Bone movie to happen for like 25 years. And you guys, this is like your 4th Fantastic Four movie?
5th?
4th? 5th?
Oh, wait, yeah. Corman.
Yeah. It is 5, yeah, if you count the Corman. Yeah. And look, like we will feast on any planet, but we realize a lot of them are poisonous and not good for us, and do the scrolls a huge injustice, and so we
and
deserve
if you
to
think
feast.
I'm being cruel to the Walt Disney Company, I will tithe to them this month. That's my agreement to you, the listener.
Bob, they're just a little company. They're trying their best. What's like, if folks like us don't support this thing, it's not going to make it.
Why don't you believe in me, Bob?
They just refuse to acquire us, and I'm taking it personally. Well, thank you once again to Mike Lawrence for being on the podcast. Mike, where can we find you online? What are you working on? What do you want to plug? Let us know.
I am on Mike Lawrence Comedy on Instagram, and I want to plug the new podcast that I'm on, Nerd of Mouth. It's a lot of fun. We talk about nerd topics. We just did video game prices episode about why they don't change, why they're starting to change. We did a full deep dive on autism where I talked about all my symptoms that people seem to like. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's me, Jake Young, and Holden McNeely on the Last Podcast Network. And I recommend it. I think if you like this show is one of the nerdiest things I've ever listened to. And it's the best. I genuinely came into you guys as a fan and a listener. Yeah, hopefully you like our show too. And that's about it.
I really loved your autism episode. And I think what you shared was very familiar to people like me out there too, who also have gotten tested recently. And I think
Well, it was a penance there for you, Henry, and you felt all the awkwardness that you've ever made other people feel.
When I hear you describing toys you owned, I was like, well, I own that toy, or I own it. Well, I got to listen to Stan Lee, The Trial of Stan Lee 1. I'm going to give this a listen very soon as well.
He defends himself as a force of nature.
You know what? I love seeing all of the great comic book T-shirts, that some of which I also own. Seeing you wear them to like the Golden Globes and stuff is so cool to see too. I love seeing that.
Thanks, man. If you're wondering who's keeping Hot Topic in business, it's me and Henry.
Thank you once again to Mike Lawrence for being on the show. Please check out all of Mike's stuff. But as for us, if you want to check out more of our stuff and get all these episodes a week ahead of time and ad-free, and then access to a huge back catalog of podcasts, head on over to patreon.com/TalkingSimpsons. You'll get everything I just mentioned for $5, but I want to underline that huge back catalog of miniseries episodes. They're all full length. You'll get access to 8 years worth of Patreon content covering things like Futurama, King of the Hill, Mission Hill, Batman the Animated Series, and The Critic. And that $5 a month also gets you new monthly episodes of both Talking Futurama, Talking of the Hill, and whatever other bonus stuff we feel like doing. It's a lot going on at that level for only $5. And it's only happening at patreon.com/TalkingSimpsons. And there is a $10 level as well. When you sign up for that, you get all of the $5 stuff naturally. But then on top of that, you also get one immense podcast once a month, only for patrons at that level. What's going on there, Henry?
Bob is talking about our What a Cartoon movie podcast, which if you think we had a lot to say about the Fantastic Four cartoon, that can't even compare to what we have to say about an extremely goofy movie, which we just covered as the start of our newest summer of Disney stuff. They're covering Disney early 2000s things. Yes, we went super in-depth into an extremely goofy movie, the start of our summer of covering the aughts output of Disney films. You can hear a free preview of it in this feed, but if you want to hear the entire thing of over 5 hours of us talking about an extremely goofy movie, you got to sign up at patreon.com/TalkingSimpsons at the $10 level. You'll get to hear also this month's new episode that we'll be covering at the end of the month, Lilo and Stitch, another beloved Disney film. And that is just the most recent of a giant back catalog of nearly 7 years of What a Cartoon Movie. We've covered all of the Disney Renaissance. We've covered Studio Ghibli films. And if you loved all this comic book talk, I know you'll love the ones we've done for Batman Mask of the Phantasm, Batman Beyond Return of the Joker, and Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, just to name a few. Sign up today to hear our massive back catalog and all the $5 things Bob also mentioned that are all ad-free too at patreon.com/TalkingSimpsons.
And I've been one of your hosts, Bob Mackey. You can find me on Blue Sky and Letterboxd and a ton of other places as Bob Servo. And I also have another podcast. It's called Retronauts, and that is a classic gaming podcast about old video games. You can find that where you find podcasts, or head on over to patreon.com/Retronauts and sign up there for 2 bonus podcasts every month. And Henry, what about you?
You can find me on Twitter at HENEREYG, but I'm certainly posting more on Instagram and Blue Sky, where I'm Talking Henry. And you will keep up to date with my stuff if you're following Talking Henry. And don't forget, on Twitter, Blue Sky, and Instagram, we are at Talk Simpsons Pod. The Talking Simpsons Network is represented on at Talk Simpsons Pod. You stay in the loop whenever new stuff happens on the Patreon. Also on the free feed, if we've got live shows, if we've got anniversaries, any cool stuff happening, you know it if you follow at Talk Simpsons Pod. And don't forget that a list of all of our previously released free podcasts of Talking Simpsons and What a Cartoon can be found at TalkingSimpsons.com.
Thanks so much for joining us, folks. We'll see you again next time for our extended free preview of this month's episode of What a Cartoon Movie, all about Lilo and Stitch, and we will see you then.
There's Galactus looking hungry, and old Dr. Doom is near. Here come the Skrulls invading. Do you run and hide in fear? No way, no way, no way. Just call the four.
That's all, no more. Now that's grammatical.
Richards is elastic. Sue can fade from sight. Johnny is the human torch. The thing just loves to fight. Call for four. Fantastic Four. Fantastic Four.
I detect no battle within Galactus' ship. Can it be that Galactus is too weak to fight? Then let Terrax himself finish what he has begun.